So we will get you guys in a moment if we may, please. I have a feeling this will be a little, Chief Shartner just has one thing he needs to go over with us. If we could have him go first so that he does not have to.
Yeah, it's only like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
So,
Sir.
as you know, when I came here a few weeks ago, I had a slight increase in my budget for another full-time officer as well as a sergeant. The select board did vote to support that extra officer, but did not vote to support the additional sergeant's position at $8,500. You know, I think it's imperative to have a supervisor on each shift, especially a shift where you're running your junior officers. Coming in a couple months, we're gonna have a combined workforce of total of 5 years' experience working on midnight shifts. Where on the day shift right now, you have 60-plus years of experience working on the day shifts. You know, I hate to use other instances, but, you know, Memphis was a classic example of unsupervised officers. You know, originally, you know, my original request was for $8,500. But what I failed to mention was that with that $8,500, there would be $1,800 less spent on OIC pay. So it would ultimately cost us $6,700 for the additional supervisor.
and sorry, what pay is that? OIC?
Oh, the officer in charge, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So whenever there's not a supervisor working, the senior officer gets a officer in
bump.
charge stipend. But, you know, with my calculations right now, it would save about $1,800, because that, you know, one midnight officer wouldn't be getting it.
Gotcha.
It would just go into the sergeant's position. So it's really up to, you know, right around the $6,700 range it would cost us for the position, but I do need $8,500 to fund it. That just means there'll probably be money left over in the budget at the end of the year to turn back, and I can reassess as the year goes on, you know, if we do need that full $8,500 or if money will be coming back.
So does that, so when you say you need the full $8,500 to fund it, is that because you can't reduce does that come out of the variable, does that come out of the full-time
no,
officers'
no.
wage, the other
No,
money?
the way my budget's set up is, it would come out of full-time wages.
Yeah,
If you added $6,700, I could probably squeak through by the skin of my teeth.
yeah,
For the year, you know, just leave, you know, but adding the $8,500, I know I can successfully complete the year with
Right.
pay. Rather than coming back in May and asking for an $1,800 transfer, because I'm short.
no, I had assumed that would be in the budget for,
Yeah.
no, like if you hadn't,
Yeah.
well, I guess it wouldn't be in the budget because you were assuming you were getting the sergeant's position.
Yeah, in FY '25, I can actually take
Right.
it out of the budget.
Yeah, okay,
You know, when I actually know the true number and, you know, when this position even gets filled, it could be September before it gets filled.
Right.
You know, it's not something that could happen July 1st. You know, I'd like to happen as close to July 1st as possible, but,
Yep.
you know, we obviously have to go through a process. You know, but, you know, just actually seeking the support of the finance committee for the ability to have a supervisor working as much as possible.
so did the select board give you a reason why they weren't supportive, or did they?
They just felt it was just too much money. You know, it's just, you know, I think everybody's fear is we're gonna be over budget.
Hmm.
And, you know, I think cumulatively, I think I came through right around with 2.7% collectively over the 1.3 or $4 million total that we budgeted between communications, expenses, and.
I was gonna say, is that accurate, young lady?
Sir, I can tell you momentarily.
Yeah, she has the real numbers.
Let's see.
I know she
So I'm
does.
looking at the budget, this is all in the supplemental piece of the budget request, right?
Yes.
This is for the night
Yeah.
staffing
Yeah,
in that
this is
supplemental
for night
request,
staffing,
yeah. I mean, you can look at my screen if you want, Stan.
Breaks
Makes you
it out
happy.
by
There's
category, so it's a
Yeah.
little hard to give
Yeah.
you, I have to.
This is the
do some
whole-
math.
Right.
Yeah, and
I was
by
more
having
wondering
this-
if the
by having a
2%
third
number,
supervisor-
2.7% number was accurate. I assume it was. He just said he thought he came in at 2.7.
Where you find the percent, or should I keep going? You can
Well, it would
drive
be
those
on,
arrows.
Kristen, it would be on her. on
The other sheet,
on
which
the
I don't
other-
think I have
You
on
don't
my.
have.
So
yeah.
mine.
I don't think I have it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw one more plug-in for this.
Sure.
We could also just believe you that that's the number. And we don't have to verify it right this very second.
I like specific numbers, I don't like.
All right,
I like
well.
specific numbers. So I contacted our policy and procedures company, And most of this is to get us through accreditation. I need to take a supervisor off the road
Just hold
a
your
lot
computer over there.
to get through accreditation.
Uh-huh.
The accreditation company said, no worries, don't worry about taking anybody off the road. We'll help you. At $12,141 per year, they will help maintain our accreditation books.
12,000?
12,141. Yeah, and if I wanted to start this year, they're gonna charge, it's $4,923 to carry us through June 30th. But, you know, I think that I would rather put the money into a person's pocket in Massachusetts that's paying taxes and put money back in the community versus sending this off to California.
Okay.
These are presently tasks that you do,
Yeah.
but it takes you off.
No, this is a new task that's coming up, part of my contract, we need to be an accredited police department.
Right, okay.
Before my contract expires. Doesn't matter if you're a department of 10 or 110, it is the same exact process. Most area departments are taking a lieutenant and sergeant off the road 100% to go through this process. We don't have those means here. And it's the same process. So we're actually trying to go for certification next year and accreditation the following year.
You did say that, you did tell us that.
The
Yeah, you did.
certification's a
Yeah.
dry run, and it gives you the opportunity to fix what needs to be fixed and adjust what needs to be adjusted.
Mhm.
And then accreditation, you have, from the day you say you're gonna be accredited, you have exactly 365 days to complete it, or you start all over again.
Wow.
If I may,
Mhm.
through the chair. One of the reasons that I did support both of these requests, we only received a small amount of supplemental funding requests. And this is not a request to go above existing level service. This is basically to maintain level service and fill a gap that should be filled in terms of the sergeant on the overnight shift.
Yeah.
And that day officer is for
Yeah.
the administrative work, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
because you're taking away people from patrol in order to do the accreditation and the additional post paperwork that is incredibly cumbersome as it's come down from the state, as we have all heard. I felt they were both very reasonable requests. I didn't feel that they were things that we should go without, because they both had consequences in terms of impacts to the department, impacts to the community, impacts to a lot of the goals that are set forth, you know, for the department in the chief's contract in
Mhm.
terms of being able to meet the state lovely unfunded mandate requirements. So, you know, I do support both requests. I love to tell my favorite story of how my mother always says nothing good happens after midnight.
Right.
You know, you worry, and you do have your junior officers, and unfortunately, I have seen some challenging things in, you know, my former community. And I know I would feel a lot more comfortable having a supervisor on the overnight shift.
I agree.
Now, also, I mean, I think I explained my expense budget too. It did go up 8.4% because of contracts, but there was also thousands of dollars taken out where I cut back.
Yeah.
I took out of specialized training, took specialized training out, like 50% of specialized training because their police academies are offering free training. Pulled the range membership, the indoor range membership for officers. That was, you know, like I said, I went through and deducted exactly where I could.
Yeah, well, it's also one of those things where the percentage number is, you know, inflated based on, you know, we're talking $9,000, not 900,000 to be
Yeah.
9%, or
Yeah,
to
and
be the
the
8%.
biggest
I mean,
increase
it's-
I was Lexipol, because we're always budgeted for 2,000, when I got the bill it was 4,100.
Yeah,
And we were already signed the contract, so we were,
because we had something else that went up. It's just like, then you said you took the percentage out because it made it
Yeah.
made it look like
You know,
something
Oh,
else.
the print cartridge for the
Is that what it-
veterans
yeah,
officer.
Yeah.
It made the expense
Yeah.
budget look like it was up 70% or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It was because of one print cartridge, because the budget was
is it
so low.
the next one down, or?
I think I gotta download it
What's
to
up,
be able
Eileen?
to turn it. I know.
When you get the
No,
angle
it's-
right,
It's
let me
this
know,
one, I
Stan.
just have to, it won't let me, let's see.
I'll let you rotate.
That's the one that shows the drop.
There we go.
Oh, now it's just
No,
upside down.
everyone,
That's
quick,
even
everyone
better.
stand on your head.
Hold on.
Where's that go?
Hold,
Yoga
pause
class.
momentarily. Don't get nauseous. Those
Don't
of you
look at
home,
the screen.
please. My apologies. No, not that one.
Avert your eyes.
Avert your eyes. There you go. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, and this is one of the things that when I look at all of the budgets and sat down with all the department heads, I talked about where are there line items where things decreased, increased, how are you absorbing those cost increases, as we all know, that are coming from inflation. And I thought that there were certain places in this budget that the chief took a long look at and said, okay, so I can decrease 1,500 here, you know, I can go down 500 there. And I mean, it's a pretty razor thin budget to begin with. I will tell you, he's got it literally, you know, down to the office supplies and, you know, the, you know, uniforms and bullets. And, I mean, it's, I like the way it's laid
The
out.
ammunition went up because the state requires we shoot twice a year now. so
That's, yeah.
Instead of once a year. But I spoke with the firearms instructors, instead of going up to 13,000, you know, I said, we need to not cut corners, but we need to do specific training, and everybody has to do exactly the same training. And when we came down to the round count, that's when I was able to get the
So that doesn't
$10,000.
translate directly into that top, into the, where you would cut up higher, up near the top?
Up top,
Shows the range.
I cut the range down to 2,500 from 4,000.
Right.
Everybody had a year membership. So what I told them is that it's $30 every time you go to pay out of pocket.
Yeah,
So I said to them, every time you go, give me a receipt, and we'll reimburse you the $30. So we were paying, you know, $4,000 for.
like a blanket check, blank, you
yeah,
can go there
for-
whenever
yeah.
you want, or.
So I think by the end of the year, I'm probably gonna be around 2,000
Okay.
tops.
Yeah, that just seemed to be contradictory to me, where you said that you had
Yeah,
increased ammunition requirement based
Yeah.
on
yeah.
regs, but
Yeah,
then.
so this is the indoor range, because we highly encourage officers to shoot
Okay,
on their own time. So the indoor
Gotcha.
range.
Okay.
Is
Worcester.
there a requirement for them to do that? Or like, do they have to do it so many times a year? Or do you just
So
want them?
we have to go to the range twice a year. We have to go a low light shoot, so in the evening, and we have to do a qualification. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, but we have to do a qualification round.
Mhm.
So, and we also have fake guns that we use on the Milo range, which is like a adult arcade game that brings up live scenarios. The guns are the same guns we carry, except for they're blue, and they don't fire, they send off signals. So that's another way we offset our ammo as well, because it doesn't use ammo.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, so, and I level funded everything. I didn't go up 2.5% on most all my items. The cruiser vehicle maintenance, I taken a shot at that at 8,100. First time in the history I've been in Berlin. We're probably gonna get 3 brand-new cruisers within 18 months. Usually that 3 new cruisers over 36 months because of supply chain. We've been getting them sporadic. I just got one last week. It was ordered last May. And we got the one that was ordered the May before, last April. So for us to get 2 cars within a calendar year is not typical within 12 months. But with the supply chain issues, because we go hybrid, they're sporadic and you never know when they're coming. You know, right now I was told that they're 12 to 18 months out if you ordered one today. So now we're gonna probably go to the opposite end of the spectrum, where next year, the year after, I'm gonna have to give them 10, 12,000 for vehicle maintenance, because our cars will have higher mileage, but right now we have a pretty new fleet. You know, gas, of course, we always shoot at the dark. I did $3.25 a gallon, so that's a minimal increase. You know, uniforms is contractual. You know,
yeah, I don't think. we
yeah,
need
and the other thing, I
to-
decreased, I decreased the lockup expenses, so we now have the regional lockup with Worcester County. So we've actually saved thousands of dollars just in the last month. With arrests on holiday weekends, we had 3 in the holiday weekend, which typically would cost us in the $2,000 range to cover, that we can now ship off to Worcester County, the regional lockup. So, you know, I'm hoping to get that whole lockup budget erased. You know, it's something that new. It's been in existence for a year. So I think by next year, I think I can even take that whole line item out of there. Radio repairs and batteries, you know, we never, obviously, you know, we could use 350,000, not 3,500, but, you know, like I said, I kept the office supplies at the same, where we've been shopping around, using different vendors. You know, in the past, if you used W.B. Mason, that's all you used. Now we're between Staples, W.B. Mason, Amazon, and a company up in Devon's that basically goes in and takes out old offices and they resell all their stuff at half price. So we've been getting a lot of supplies from there as well. It's all recycled stuff. So we're paying 50% of the cost of what it costs to go through WB Mason. So that's why I had no issues saving office supplies there, because we have this new avenue.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think,
Okay.
Stan, to your point, I mean, you're going and reducing where you can reduce to offset those increases that are mandated or, required, and,
Yeah,
you're certainly
like the big
trying to
one,
make
the
it
bond,
work.
full-time specialized
Yeah.
training. We always budgeted $650 per officer for specialized training, and I knocked that right down. There are classes, some $200 classes that are mandated that we have to send people that BTC, Municipal Police Training Council, doesn't pay for. Firearms classes for issuing LTCs, post-promotional suicide classes. There's always like little intricate classes that we have to pay. Like, it used to be $129, now they're $199. So I still left money to do that, but you see, took $3,350 out of there.
All right, well, we will absolutely consider your request when we're voting on our budgets, and I think you make a good argument, and I think you do. In a perfect world, you absolutely have our support, and the question is whether,
Yeah.
whether
I mean,
the numbers make
supportive,
sense and whether the budget, whether the budget comes together and we can make it all work. That's becomes our task for the month of March. But for now, we appreciate your coming in and explaining this to us and why you feel it's important. And
Yeah, because this one right here is going to be the big one next year. I just got a call 2 weeks ago that Taser called me. Our tasers that we bought discounted 3 years ago are sunset clause liability next June. So that $3,200 is probably going to turn into $15,000 next year.
super duper.
Yeah. I have them working me up a quote to get
Don't
the
tase me,
council.
bro. Can we just
Yeah.
can that
Yeah.
be the mantra? And then we don't
But
have
if
to
it's
do it.
over 10,000 and they have a useful life
Yeah.
of, can we
Right.
get them to work for 5 years and we can put them in
Well,
capital?
these other ones will be 5 years.
Then we can put
They
them
will
in
they will
capital.
be, they will be 5 years by the time, but yeah, they were nice enough to call me and remind me that June 2024, they're no longer insurable. So,
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it is, so obviously, it's a reasonable sort of thing
Yep.
to have that night supervision, yeah,
Cartoon.
Yeah.
Compliments that day.
very reasonable. And especially the amount of dollars involved.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping us safe.
You guys are?
Yeah.
Have a good night,
Bring
Chief.
extra chairs
Why-
if you need.
Why should you have all the fun, Chief? You got stuff for us?
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful.
Nancy has
Yeah,
You
done.
must have been in education. Oh, no, you are in education.
Thank you so much.
Carol, do you have another one? We are going to see Scott later.
Scott should be here, yeah.
Do you have another
We'll
one
need
of
one
these?
more if you have one.
I just,
So you
Okay.
just want to grab,
Oh.
these are all. We actually have more.
A bunch of it, if you each want to take one.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
And that's the other.
I can go this way. That's the best for, we don't need to be on camera. My off
Wait a
camera
minute, are
is
these all the
basically
same?
No, they're
Just
not.
kidding, just kidding.
I can
If they're
go all
paper
the way
clip.
over.
Oh,
So if you each want to
Please
take
don't.
one.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
already
oh,
failed
one-
kindergarten here.
What were our instructions, Julie?
one from each paper clipped bundle.
One from each paper clip. That is so hard.
Okay,
Complaining
so
about
we'll
it.
pass this one down?
Take one down, pass it around. Did you get one of these?
No, you have to give me one, please.
Okay, then I will do that.
Thank you.
That's yours.
This is
That's
yours.
mine. This will be for the group, or does
Okay.
Julie
so
need
These
one?
are,
Yeah, Julie needs one.
And Scott needs one.
Right, that was putting the extras this way. just 'cause I
Oh,
thought that made
okay,
sense.
extra, you taking the extras?
I was taking the extras,
Okay,
yep.
There you go.
Oh, okay. I was
Or
sending-
at least setting them
Okay.
here for,
And I think I need one of those.
this looks the same.
How's that?
Thank you.
How about
I
think this is the same.
Well, then, are there extra
Oh, I
copies?
do have that one.
Oh, this
You have
was the
this one.
extra, got it.
Do you have one of those?
Yep, I have enrollment history,
So leave one there for him, and then
Yep.
I'm gonna pass these around.
but we need the Tohoto, yeah, we needed that Tohoto Middle School one.
I think
Yep.
we all really need to
There's
go
4
back
of
to
them?
school, apparently.
One for,
Yep,
one for Scott.
Next time.
Oh, sorry,
have-
Kristen. Yeah,
we got it.
So we have one for
mine.
Right, that's yours, that's extra.
We need
Right,
another
or
one?
we need one for
For
June.
June.
For June.
Thank you.
Does Julie have one?
Do you have this?
Okay, there should have been 4, right, of those? Plus
4
this?
papers?
4 sets? Plus the,
Yes.
and we're good. Oh, I'm good. I don't know if you guys are good. I don't know.
Five.
5, ruh-roh.
Okay.
I have 4. I have Burrell Memorial, I have enrollment history, I have Tohoto MS, I have Tohoto Middle School.
For your capital
Do you
plan?
have the capitals?
Ah, that's the one I'm missing.
Oh, okay, I need,
You got it. You-
I'm
We're
missing,
missing capital plans
Yep,
down
there
there.
you go.
And then one for June, right?
Yep.
This is really funny.
Berlin.
Capital plan, capital plan for you.
thank you.
I think I
I have
confused
another.
things.
Okay.
No, I have Berlin, I don't have Tohoto.
Are you sitting on any extras down there, Julie?
All right, got it.
Okay, these, I think these are extras.
Okay.
Well, that's probably why,
Yep,
because
there's
there's
the extra
extras.
Tohoto. Yep, Julie's hoarding them down there.
Yes.
Okay,
Extras.
where do we want to start?
Kristen, does this mean we're in trouble already?
Oh, yeah.
No need to
It's
wear-
it's over
we're in
already.
bad shape.
You can ask for anything you want, but it's all down the tubes now, so.
Not at all.
All right, where do you want to start?
Well, I'll start tonight. So, I'm Carol Costello. You've known me in different forms for 15 years. I've been in the district as a principal in Burrell Memorial. I moved over to central office. And in taking this position this past December, what called me to do this work is something I've always loved, is the children in this district, children at Burrell Memorial School and all the other schools, and advocating for their best interests. So we're coming to you tonight with an extraordinary budget. We have, and I've watched the budgets go on, I've been at many of the town meetings, most of them in fact, through the years. And so I want to be honest with you about that, but it goes with reasons that involve the needs of the children at this point. And we're going to go through that tonight and try to explain to you why we're asking for this large reach, and ask you to help us in any way you can to at least meet most, if not all of these. We realize that maybe not everything can go through this year, but if we explain to you why we're asking for these particular items and the personnel and so on, we hope that that gives you a better understanding as we move forward toward the town meeting. So the journey began this summer. The admin team sat and really thought about, hey, going forward after the pandemic, who are we? What are we about? What do we want for our children? What do we want for their future? We realized we're at a crossroad. We needed to get better technology. It's what the children are using now. It's part of their life in the way it hadn't been in years past. Even when I was a principal, we didn't have that need for the way technology functions. Personnel, the cost of special education, everything has seemed to hit us all at one time. And we want our children to be able to stay in district. We want them to grow here. We want them to have, we don't want to lose children in Tohoto because we're not giving them enough of what they need. And we want to meet the needs of the children in the elementary schools. In just a moment, we'll tell you about the enrollment, even from last year alone, that are coming in with new building. We're seeing I'm blown away when I come through town now to see all of the new homes that have been built in the past several years. I mean, certainly in the last decade, multiple dwellings and individual homes that are bringing children into the district. So we worked on this is a 3-year district plan, and we broke it up into 4 areas. What we need for personnel, what we need for technology, the usual curriculum, teaching and learning materials, resources, programs, and so on. And then we looked at being fiscally responsible, financial resources that would kind of shore up some of the pockets that we have so that we have reserves to go to in the next couple of years. And that's how we built the 3-year plan. Then we worked in the fall. Unlike other years, I have worked so closely, and introduce these folks in just a moment, with the school committee in my previous capacity, and now in this role as superintendent, to build a budget. And we sat down and we were saying, what do we need? You know, what do we actually need? And this budget is built on that. Not only for Berlin children in Berlin Memorial, but our children in Tohoto and our Boylston children in Tohoto. So we took in all of that as one district. We are one district now. So what we used to say, okay, we got Berlin does its thing and Boylston. It's just not that way anymore. Whether it's, you know, I know that's been difficult, but we're all one, and that's how we have to operate to make sure all of our children have equitable access, right, to their education. So we built the budget this fall. We came up with the numbers, and we put everything together. And we were here already. We came for capital planning, and now we're here tonight. I think Nancy probably talked to folks informally about what we were coming in at. As I said to you, I realize it's a huge reach. We have been going out to private organizations. We've been trying to do look for funds other places, corporate funding, grants, to try to alleviate some of the costs that you'll see here, particularly in capital planning, and we're hoping that those come through for us. I also want to mention to you that during COVID years, we had grants. We had one in particular called the ESSER grants. It was like 3 years of significant funding for our schools. But it's not that much money really overall. Some of the bigger towns and cities, they get a lot of money. They get like millions of dollars. We got maybe a couple hundred. That took care of adjustment counselors for the schools. We use a Family Success Partnership, which gave resources to families who were struggling during COVID. We built more psychologists into the budget, basically mental health needs and social emotional needs for the children, because we still need it. It's still going on. A lot of our partners in other districts have cut those positions. That's what they've done with the budget. So all of those resources that they used during COVID, it was like saying, okay, COVID's over, we don't need this anymore. But in fact, we still do. The needs are there. And then we thought about, how are we going to grow? How are we going to build more into the education of our children? And that's some of the things you'll hear about in the above level service. These are things we want to add over the 3-year period of time. So as we think about what we're going to do in that time period, whether we get everything we need this year, or we get it in the 3-year period of time, it's not that we're cutting it forever. We're going to need, those are the things we're going to need over the next couple of years. So before we kind of get started into the nuts and bolts of all this, and please stop us if you have questions along the way. I want to introduce the folks who are here with me tonight. They represent a larger group that's been working on this budget, and also the fact that I think we've been working on it in 2 towns, and working on it with school committee members of both towns. So first, Nancy Koniski is new to our district this year. She has been amazing. She's our finance director. She's put together a presentation that is so clear, except for the paper clips. We're going to work on that one. That's going to be our goals for next month. We got this one. But she's made this so clear, and she's been so terrific in advocating in so many places with me to talk about this budget. So she's going to be the point person for really breaking down the financial picture. This is Megan Grill. She's from Boylston. She's our school committee member. And then obviously, you know, Julie Lee, who is one of our Berlin school committee members. And over here we have Paul Mara, who is our technology coordinator, and he can help answer any of the questions about the technology needs if you have them. So we've been going out, you're hearing about us, we're at PTO meetings, we're going to CPAC. I have a meeting at the Council on Aging coming up at the end of February. We're going to try to get to 19 Carter. Our feeling is at least vote on a budget you understand. And I feel like one of the things we're trying to do is present this and say, if nothing else, be informed before you make your decision on May 1st with the town vote. So that's really what we're trying to do, is get the message out there. Here's where we're at. ask us questions. We'll come to wherever you invite us to, or we'll go to wherever we need to go. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Nancy and she can get started.
Thank you. So before I get into the budget, I thought we could look at the enrollment history and the enrollment numbers. So it's the one, it says.
I left that on top. I thought that would be where you'd
right?
start.
Aren't you clever?
I said, what would I do? I'd start with enrollment.
If I was me, yeah.
So we can start with Berlin Memorial. So it goes from the years from fiscal year 17 all the way to fiscal year 23. When looking at this, keep in mind that fiscal year 20 and 21 were our COVID years, so a lot of kids were homeschooled during this time. But as you can see in fiscal year 22, we had an increase of 24 children, and in this year we had an increase of 12 children, and that's for our elementary school. And then when you look at Tohoto, you'll actually notice, so in the middle is Tohoto as a whole, and then down below is Tohoto for Berlin only. So when you're looking at that, you'll see in fiscal year 22, there was a decrease of 4%, increase of 4%. In fiscal year 22, and then in fiscal year 23, it stayed the same at 156 kids. So one of the reasons that we wanted to point that out is, yes, we're having growth in our elementary schools, but in our high schools, a lot of our kids are choosing to go out. It's very common in the 8th grade, going into 9th grade, they're choosing other schools. So we have to find a way to keep our students within our district. And the one other way to do this is to make our schools more attractive. The dropping of the enrollment validates our needs for a lot of the programs and the support that we're looking for in this budget. That's the enrollment. And then if we want to move on to the one that says, we'll start with Berlin Memorial, the preliminary budget. So the way I broke out this budget, I broke it out in two ways. You have what is called your level service budget. Your level service budget is when a district provides the same. Yep.
Sorry, I
Yes.
hate to interrupt your
Yeah, please
rhythm
do,
there, but
please
back
do.
on the enrollment, the bottom box on the page is the Tohoto Middle School, High School, Berlin only.
Yes.
And so the Berlin piece, the percent fiscal 22 and 23, if I'm reading it correctly, it was 4% increase in a flat in terms of enrollment. Am I reading this correctly?
Right, we didn't
Yes.
get anyone from
Right.
Berlin. No, we didn't get additional students. into
No
the
additional
class
But
next
you
year.
had overall, there was a decrease.
Those are the
Correct.
Boylston.
So that includes Boylston.
Most of them are Boylston.
Right.
So the loss of students, or the students going out of district, is happening on the Boylston side principally.
Aside from
Yes.
last year, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I
Sorry.
understood that from, oh, that's all right.
Many of them
Yeah.
are going to private schools and
Okay.
academies and Catholic schools and, yeah, so.
Yeah.
If Berlin goes out around 8th to 9th grade where we're seeing the dip, a lot of them are going to Assabet if they
Yeah.
get in.
Ah.
Assabet's kind of moving a new direction too this coming year. They're doing a lottery system. They're allowing a certain number
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then they're doing a lottery, and none of the Boylston students can get in to Assabet at this point. So while some of them are going, they've always gone from Berlin into Assabet, to the trades and so on. But we're losing kids too who are going into like technology, and we feel like technology is a big field that we can also cover in Tohoto if we have the right applications.
I was just curious, the two towns, I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
real
yeah.
trend or what that
Yeah.
is. It's just very curious to me,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Yeah.
I said, is that what I'm reading? And it is what I'm reading.
Yes,
Thank you.
Definitely.
Where are we heading? Sorry, Nancy, what's the
Okay,
next?
so
what's the
now
next?
we'll start with Berlin Memorial. the
Berlin
elementary
Memorial, like
school.
this guy right here,
Yep.
yeah? This one.
That's
Yes, yes, Berlin Memorial, Berlin.
practicing.
No, I'm not from here, I'm really working on Berlin.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
Like Merlin, someone
Yeah.
told me, and that really
Oh,
helped
that's-
me,
that's
because I was
good.
saying
Oh,
it
that's
wrong for
perfect.
months. So,
Okay.
no
It's not
worries.
Berlin, like Berlin.
Thank you for bearing with me.
Berlin.
It's all right.
They actually changed it in World War I, you know, they changed the pronunciation, so.
I like it.
They did.
Berlin, you know that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I broke out the budget between your level service needs and your above level service needs. So your level service needs are needs pretty much to keep the district status quo, but meet your contractual obligations. So you have your salary obligations with your teachers' contracts, utility rates go up, you're meeting your federal mandates and your state mandates with special education. And then your above level service provides the same level of service to the students that it did in its prior year, but it also includes additional needs. It helps with the changing needs in education from new curriculum, new programs, additional support services, and additional technology. So I thought we would start with the level service only for Berlin Elementary. So the total increase for level service only is 12% at $481,000. I split it out so you could see the difference between the general budget and the special education budget. So for the general budget, it's an increase of 53% at $253,000. And the special education is 47% increase at $227,000. Some of the major drivers of this, so under general education, we have a math tutor. Last year, this math tutor was paid for one of the grants that Ms. Costello mentioned earlier. And this year, we kept it in the budget, but we had to put it into the budget this year. We have a retirement payout for one of our classroom teachers per the contractual agreement. We need new copiers. The copiers are from 2018. They need to be updated. We have a custodian. This is just healthcare costs. Currently, the custodian is contracted out, and we're bringing that custodian back in-house. We have a slight increase to our regular transportation. We have an increase to our electricity, increase to our health insurance and benefits, and we need a dyslexia screener. Mandated, correct. Thank you. And then under special education, we have a payout for one of our teachers who's retiring. We have quite a large increase to our special education transportation. We need additional bus monitor that's mandated. And we have 2 new students who are going out of district. And on top of those 2 students who are going out of district, there's a 14% increase to our private out of district tuitions that has hit us this year. Normally, our increases have been 3 to 4%, and now all the private schools have put in an increase of 14%. So that's a huge hit.
And that was sanctioned by the state.
Yeah.
We have to, that's how much they were allowed to go up,
Right.
13%.
Yep.
So they did. Any of these tuitions can run between $100,000 and $300,000 a child. So the last time we were here for the preliminary pass on the budget, when we presented this, it was shocking. I mean, the folks who were here couldn't believe it, and we can't either. I mean, but as we get students in, the probability of getting students who have needs that the district can't service becomes greater. We do everything we can to keep them here, but sometimes we just cannot meet their needs.
Just the out-of-district tuitions alone is a 34% increase at $164,000. Our transportation has just that alone was $46,000. Transportation for special education. And then our supplies and materials is $198,000. Does anyone have any questions on the level service only section?
I could probably wait till the end, but I just want to ask the question up front about special education. I know that it's not funded this year. Is next year, is it always a year behind? Is that what it is? There's a circuit breaker?
Funding? Yes, it's a year behind, and you get 75% back of the funds you're able to claim into it, of your claimable funds.
Okay.
Yep. So that is applied already into these
Right.
figures. Yeah.
From the prior year. I mean, you're always running a year.
But
behind.
I already allocated
Yes.
it to the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
can, but hopefully going forward, if we're seeing, if, at some point, if the
Yes.
numbers are jumping dramatically,
Those figures will jump too.
in
Our
theory.
revenue.
Right.
from-
Okay,
yes,
that's what
exactly.
I guess
Yep.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yep, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep. And we also get a 240 grant from the state that we can use towards tuitions.
Mhm.
That's already allocated also. And
Right.
that's pretty a standard, state standard, because it's an entitlement grant. Yep.
Okay.
So to follow up on what Stan said, as we look at these numbers on the page,
Yep.
are we looking at those incoming revenues from last year's payments? Where do they show up in these numbers anywhere? Do I make sense?
So-
Yeah, I
Can
mean,
you say it a
they'll
different
be in the
way?
they'd be in the revenue section. I mean, right now, we're in the cost section. but,
Okay.
They would
So I'll-
show up
I'll
in,
hold
well,
that.
they
At this-
should show up, I would assume, in your revenue portion of the.
I don't have that portion in here yet, because we don't have the assessments yet.
Okay.
So this really is an expense-only presentation.
Sure.
Except that the grants and the revolvings that have been applied towards the budget are included in here. And if you want that broken out, I do have that.
So your numbers are net, Nancy. You've already applied the grants to the,
Yeah,
what
that's
the
a-
ask.
yes.
So that's
Right.
the net number, to answer your question.
That's
Yeah.
part of my question.
Yeah.
But it
So
doesn't.
like, I don't have it broken out by the assessments that would go to the towns, by the chapter 70, transportation assessment, all of that's not included at this point in time. So the governor's budget's projected to come out in March. Usually it comes out in February, so it's kind of put everything behind.
Right.
But, yeah.
And then what we're referring to as circuit breaker funding, that always comes later? When does that,
So,
what's the
it's
timing? How
kind
does
of
that,
rolls- so
what's
let
that
me-
cycle?
Hold on one second. So I can tell you, right now, circuit breaker's been applied to the budget for 175,000. So that's kind of a rolling figure. So we received 175,000 last year, and that's gonna be applied for this year. So whatever we get for fiscal year '23 will be used for fiscal year '24.
Okay,
Yes,
so sorry, what
so-
was the amount? 175?
175,000. And you actually, that's a revolving fund that you have.
That is correct.
That sometimes you can allocate more, sometimes you take out less, depending
Yes.
on the needs
Yep.
of your budget for the year. Correct.
Exactly.
You
Yep.
said you already applied the circuit breaker. That 175 is already.
It's already applied.
It's applied in there too, so that's
Right.
netted in there too.
Yep.
But that's just projecting what they expect to receive from the state.
Yes.
Again, I mean, this is not
Right.
175 of new
Yeah.
revenue that they're not. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, you know, you get a possibility of applying for extraordinary funds in circuit breakers. So if you go above what you budgeted,
Mhm.
you can apply for extraordinary funds. If we get that, then we'll be able to apply more to the
What's the
budget, more than
criteria for applying for that?
175,000. If you go over, I don't know the exact percentage, but if you go over a certain percentage of your budget, you can apply for extraordinary funds.
Okay.
And I do know that our special ed director is applying for that. I don't know, we don't know at this point in time if it'll be approved, because it gets reviewed by the state and it goes through a whole process. So it's very early in the budget process, and there's a lot of things that could help a little bit.
But again, that wouldn't come in until next year though, correct? Or would that actually come in?
No, extraordinary funds you
come
have
in now?
to spend in the year you receive.
Ah,
So if we
okay.
received it in the late spring, we would have to apply it to the '24 budget.
Okay.
It gets all confusing. Are you good?
24 budget or 23? If you, let's say something came through April
Well, in the
20th.
In the calendar year, you
23.
receive it. So we could use it in the '24 budget.
Okay,
Yeah, it goes to calendar with that, not
Okay.
fiscal. Yep. Okay.
So the first half of the FY '24 budget.
Yes, yep, yep.
So I know this is a lot. I'm still trying to grapple with understanding the money you get
It's a
this year
confusing,
and the
yeah.
money you get next year. So what you're saying is under the special ed increase, that's 227, that's after applying what you're getting back for FY '23?
Yes,
Okay. So
that's correct.
Okay. But then what's going to happen is a portion of this would get reimbursed in FY '24 because you've
Yes.
had a greater, you've had a larger demand, I guess I would say.
Well, it'll be 75% of the number
Yeah,
from this
like
year.
75% of the, it's out of
Expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
district, and it's also a lot of services that we give our children throughout the year that get support services that
So
get
some
applied.
portion, I guess what I'm asking is where you're budgeting it is that of that 227K, 75% of that you expect to get reimbursed.
Yes.
Okay,
I would,
but
to
you
be
haven't-
safe, I
but
would
you-
say between 70 and 75.
But you haven't put that as part of the budget yet?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's something
Well, no.
But that's for next
I put
year.
Yeah, that's for, I put 175,000 towards the budget for that.
Mhm.
So the money that so this expenses
Mhm.
will go to 25.
Mhm.
The revenue that you receive from fiscal year '24 expenses will be the allocation that I applied to the fiscal year '25 expenses.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
But where it's hard is that it's not going to be, it's not the same amounts every year.
Correct. It never will be because it's so
Because
rolls
it's
to the
off.
next. Right.
So it makes it look like you're actually paying more in special ed? That's how it's.
Well, it
that's how
does
it's coming
because you're
across.
because you're claiming your expenses and then you get your revenue the year prior,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, it does. Unless you have a really good year and your special ed expenses are really low and then you made out, you got a lot the year before, then you could be ahead of the game. But I'll tell you, I've been doing this for 15 years and I haven't seen that happen. And unfortunately, as long as I've been doing this, as special ed increases, just get more and more demanding.
Plus the 14%.
Plus the
On top of it,
14%
which
is
really
helping, you know,
was a shock
yeah,
to
yeah.
many districts, all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then if we go to the above level service. So the above level service comes from the district improvement plan that Ms. Kristoff spoke about. So the total increase for the above level service is 20%, which is $360,000. 73% of that is from the general budget at $263,000. And 27% of that is from special education at $97,000. To briefly go over and break those out, what they are, so the district improvement plan was broken out by personnel. So under general education, we need a kindergarten paraprofessional, which would give us a paraprofessional in every one of our kindergarten classes. We would like a health teacher, and .40 FTE of that health teacher would be applied to the Berlin budget. We would like a floating nurse, and a quarter of that floating nurse would be applied to this budget. An additional technology technician, and .25 FTE of that would be applied to this budget. And then under special education, we're requesting an additional special education paraprofessional, a .25 FTE occupational therapist, and a .25 BCBA. And then under teaching and learning, which is, so under general education, writing curriculum, social emotional curriculum, read aloud and novels, a portrait of a graduate program, and this is small, on the smaller end, but it's introducing typing.com for our little ones. And under special education, the wraparound services for our families and ABA training for our paraprofessionals. So for technology, we're looking to upgrade our Power School system and to have electric report cards through our Power School system from kindergarten through 5th grade. Then we have some items that are not in the district improvement plan, but we have requests for. So there's various software that will help our district. DocuSign, Rocket Math, Foundation FubHub, Amera, Fluency, and Harper's Time and Attendance. We need, if we get a new special education teacher, we need a new desk and a new chair for that teacher. Literacy decodable materials for kindergarten through 3rd grade. We currently rent our lease outdoor storage container that we definitely will have a continuation of a need for. So it makes sense to purchase it than to keep leasing it, because if we purchased it at the very beginning, we would have owned it by now. We need to reprogram our pellet boiler. We have various items. We did a facility assessment. What was it, 2 years ago? We did a facility assessment. So we have various items from the facility assessment that we would like to get started on to help keep up with our building. And various items from facility ranging from maintenance, repairs, plumbing, HVAC, boiler, and other expenses. A lot of repairs are coming up the pipeline. In our special education reserve fund. And under special education, there's a Orton Gillingham training that is federal mandated that we need. And I'm sure you have questions on these items.
So the additional 100,000, my first question would be the additional almost $100,000 under special education, that's just the ABA, that's these two items under special education, Family Success Partnership and ABA training?
Yeah,
Or is there-
I can speak to those. So the Family Success Partnership is a service that we get from Assabet Valley Collaborative, and we purchase that. It's about $36,000. We get 10 seats there, or 10 slots. We split it among the district, and these are, this group helps partner families with resources around the community. So if there are mental health issues, for example, if there are needs because of housing resources, whatever is affecting the families at the time, and for their children and the families, they can access this resource. It's run really through special education, but there's only 10 seats, so we pay into that, and we split the cost throughout the district of that. It was filled. We had all 10 seats taken during COVID, and we still are. That was, again, something that was paid for through the ESSER grant that I mentioned before, but now that's gone away, so we would lose that ability to provide services for those families. The ABA, the BCBA is a board-certified behavior analyst. We currently have one, and she is everywhere. The needs are growing so much for her that she can't even meet the needs in the district right now. This is an individual who works largely with children with autism, for example, any kind of behavior issues, and we've just found that there's just a need for another person to help with that. Same with the occupational therapist. We've had a wonderful occupational therapist for years. It worked great. And it's time, but again, speaks to the needs, and the needs of the children are growing. So we're looking to just get another person in. I worry too about these positions because we're overworking these individuals to the point I don't want to lose them. These people have been here for a while, but their caseloads are enormous right now. So we are good, great workers, good, and I'm concerned about that.
And if I could just add with the occupational therapist, right now, we actually outsource a large part of that. So financially, it makes sense to bring it in-house instead of outsourcing it, because it's obviously, it's very expensive going out.
So these FTEs that are percentages here, is this because part of this is being applied to Boylston, or are you
Yes.
only actually hiring half of a floating nurse and we're paying a quarter and they're paying, I mean, it ends up being a half
It's shared
FTE,
position between all three schools.
all three?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be a full-time, that's a full-time
That one,
ad.
the floating nurses.
The floating nurse is a
Yes.
full-time ad. I assume that means that Tohoto is a half, we're a
That is
quarter, and
correct.
Boylston's a
Half,
quarter.
and then, yes, that's
The health
correct.
teacher is 60.6 is over in Boylston. That's the elementary health teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have this, we've been pushing up the health teachers since Angela Yildiz and I talked about this about 8 to 10 years ago in the school committee meetings, because the state hadn't put new frameworks in place. They hadn't revised those. They're still 1999 frameworks. We've been hoping that they get them in, and we thought, okay, we can keep pushing this off. That's how many years.
Okay. So all of these are full-time, they're just being divided out between the budgets?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the teaching and learning component of this is typical. These are just programs, resources, textbooks that we usually put in the budget anyway. So you usually see this every year. A large portion of our technology is in the capital plan.
Yeah.
So that's separate.
The replacement of the Chromebooks?
Yes.
Yes.
What seems to be making parents happy is the Power School upgrade, which will enable families to do the online registration, all of the paperwork electronically. Which,
Well, I can tell you, my wife advocated for that years ago. So.
yeah. And we have,
Hi, Scott. We have a pile of paper for Scott.
I do. Except we're missing the one we're on now.
Well, then there must be another copy here somewhere, huh?
I have an extra cap.
You got the one?
Yeah, the one I need is an extra, I need
Berlin
one more of
Memorial.
the Berlin Memorial
I have.
FY '26.
Oh, you got one? Oh, thank you.
So
There we
that's
go.
for Scott, that's all of those.
So we went through this, and this is the second, we went through the enrollment, and this is the second thing we're doing. So,
This is for Scott as well.
Oh, yeah, and then that's for you as well.
oh, yeah. We're not even talking about that yet.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Who's this Orton Gillingham fella?
It's like a Wilson training, this alternative method of teaching children to read, usually used in special education.
Gotcha.
Particular cases.
For the facility assessment, we put in there various items, just to kind of fill you in on that. So we need to replace and refinish 4 exterior doors, remove and replace the concrete walkway as it's cracking and it's a safety hazard. They're not high ticketed items, so that's why they're below 5, so that's why they're not in the capital plan.
Oh, gotcha.
Replace ceiling tiles in the cafeteria and in room 203, and exterior masonry repairs to the corners in the buildings.
Alrighty.
Want me to move on to Tohoto?
I know, Scott, you're just catching up. Does
Yeah.
anybody else have questions on Berlin at this point? And let's move on to Tohoto.
Yeah.
And then that will be my last directive, and Scott can drive it from here. I'll defer back to the chair, to the actual chair.
So for Tohoto, we'll start with the level service only increase. So the total increase is 13% at 1.3 million. The general budget has a 43% increase. Before I continue, I want to say that this is, at this point in time, this is both towns combined.
Right.
So this isn't just.
Right.
Okay. So the general budget is 43% increase at 556,000. Special education is a 57% increase at 733,000. To go over the big ticket items under general education, the health and insurance benefits is projected to come in at a 10% increase. Our electricity is projected to come in at a 39% increase. We have a large increase to our regular transportation. Our oil, it's still out to bid. We've gone out to bid, actually. This is our 3rd time going out, hoping we can kind of get something a little better. So that's still out there. We are requesting to lease 2 new copiers and to buy 1 new copier. They're just as old as the other ones in Berlin Memorial. And same thing with the custodian. He's currently contracted outside. We would like to bring him back in-house.
Nancy, on a percentage basis, what's that roughly, the difference between contract out in-house? Can you give
So
me a-
the pay's the same, it's the benefits, so it could range from 7 to 17,000. 7,000 to 17,000 for benefits, or 0 if he chooses not to have any, the person.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's really,
0 to,
the district really saves on the benefit side of it, so you're flat in terms of the
Yeah.
straight-up
Yeah.
wages. Yeah, okay.
you just have so much more control of the person when you have them in-house.
Oh,
Yeah, so.
yeah, there's no, the logic behind this is clear to me.
Okay, okay.
I was interested in the numbers, like
Yeah.
how big of a change is this? So
Yeah.
it's noticeable, it's not huge, but it's noticeable.
It's noticeable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
I was gonna say, Mary, my father was a school custodian for 20 years, so if you need some insight on that, but you sound well versed.
Yeah. Yeah.
We gave it a chance for a couple of years, but there's nothing like having those custodians who care about their building, care about the people there, that.
Yeah.
You are preaching to the choir on these points.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
My
Yeah.
former
Okay.
community, I think, would agree with you. They
Yeah.
made the switch, and I think they regret that they did it as well.
Yeah.
Because among other things, the right custodian is really helpful on mental health with the students, too.
It really is. Isn't it? It's so true. Mhm.
So you might not need to spend over there so much if you have that.
Well, our custodian in Berlin
Slash
Memorial.
the, slash the mental health budget and get a great
Bring the
custodian.
custodian in.
Our custodian Danny that retired a couple of
Sorry?
years ago in Berlin.
Yeah.
Custodian that we had retired. He used to play basketball with the kids as a special reward, and he would go in and read books.
Yeah.
That day, he'd be invited in from the teachers,
Yeah.
It was very special, and he was part of the community.
We all know, we know these people, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Ryan.
Th-
Yeah, the one in Boylston.
Thank
My
you.
kids talk about him all the time.
Thank you.
So under special education, we're projected to have 2 new additional students to go out of district. The total with the 14% increase for a private out of district, that's coming to 710,000. We have increased needs for our PT services, music therapy, and hearing impaired students, which because of the 2 new out of district students, we have an increase to our special education transportation. So that's a big ticketed line item. We have conferences increased according to the special education personnel contracts. And then we have an additional need for special education consultations and evaluations. So that's our level service only.
Have you gotten any indication from the new governor, and I ask this knowing that I heard her speak once, and she's rah, rah, healthcare, education, and I know it's hard to speculate on, but when she spoke at the Mass Municipal Association conference a few weeks ago, she really did highlight healthcare and education as her 2 areas of focus. She talked about Chapter 70 funding, she talked about unfunded mandate special education. I didn't know, she didn't get into a lot of specifics, but I didn't know if you had gotten any indications on your end, kind of what her priorities were, or, in your field, what folks are talking about, the direction that things are headed under the new leadership.
Gotten a little bit of feedback from BASBO, which is part of, we actually had, there was a conference today that they had online, and same thing, she's very pro-education. People are feeling very hopeful,
Okay. But no real specifics
No,
yet. Yeah.
nothing specific.
That's exactly
Yeah,
what we got.
yeah.
Usually at the annual MMA conference, we get numbers. And she says, well,
Right.
we're 12 days into our administration, so we're
Right.
going to have to wait till
Definitely delayed.
March on the
Yeah.
numbers. And
Yeah.
that's just, when you transition, that's how it happens.
Right.
So,
Last week, we were at the Boylston FinCom, and we had Senator Kennedy there, Robin
Mhm.
Kennedy. At Worcester, we had Megan Kilcoyne, our representative there as well. And they did talk about pushing for, they recognized the same things you're saying, they echoed her sentiments, and they talked about grants that they were advocating to come out for schools like ours. That's another piece of this, and I did want to mention, so I'm glad you brought that up. We used to get rural schools here. the rural schools grants were cut from Berlin and from Boylston, and from Tohoto, so we don't get that funding anymore. Plus, it's been really hard for us to get, as small towns, we don't get the kind of grant funding. Even in our Title I, 2A, and 4, I get $10,000 in Title IV funding for like community, family engagement, maybe about $32,000 in Title I. We use that for tutors, for additional support in the schools. Some districts get millions, but little towns like ours don't get this, especially, whatever the formula is that they use, it's not in our favor. So we did talk about that with them, and they felt, they wanted to push forward.
As much as they can,
As
right.
much as they can, right.
And
Formula they're
that's the
probably
hard
using
part.
is the number of pupils, but,
We're
right,
too
I mean,
middle, we're too much in the middle. We're not poor enough, but we're not
Yeah.
rich enough to
Right.
finance it ourselves. We're not
Right.
big enough to get the huge funding, but we're not small enough for the rural grants, like Carol said.
Right in
They
the
build it
middle.
off of
So,
economic.
Right in
yeah,
the sweet
we're
spot.
too much in the middle
Yeah.
for everything, so we miss out on, we miss everything.
So
That's-
we are their constituents, and I just
Yeah,
fired off a note to the two of them before this meeting.
good.
Yeah.
I know
Keep it good.
Mike Totman, who's the chair of the school committee, also followed up with an email to
Yes.
them and said, basically, we hope that what you had to say, you will continue to advocate for us, and we want to have you back and back, to keep talking to you and about what's going on here.
Well, my note particularly pulled out the special education situation, because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
That can be fixed.
yeah.
That's timing, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, the circuit breaker, you mean? She
what?
was talking about that, and I thought she said,
What?
didn't she say it might go up too? I mean, again, they don't
Whatever.
know. The other thing they mentioned too was the millionaire tax that just passed in Mass, and supposedly that's all gonna be used on education, and didn't she say the millionaire tax is supposed to be going towards education? But
well,
again, it was
and,
all
I mean, in infrastructure,
blah,
it's
blah.
supposed to be both, but,
Yeah, there was no specifics, there was no, so yes, they're telling us this, but again, they're all new, and they have to go through the yeah, and it'll be a year before we actually see any of that money, best case scenario.
right? Because it hasn't been collected yet.
Well,
It hasn't been collected, no, and I think it's 2023. It's
Right.
not even gonna be for, yeah. So it'll
Right.
be 24, get it in 25,
25.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I just, it's a little bit odd to me. I think you need to fund in real time somehow.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how you get from here to
Yes.
there, but that needs to happen.
yeah, that is hard for
I mean, if you
governmental
tie it to a
funding.
mandate, that needs to happen. It needs to be funded in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't be asking the citizens in this town to just like, oh, just wait, we're going to tell you later. It's like, no, they have budgets too.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, for somebody who doesn't have kids in school,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what is the mechanism, is it done at the town level when working with all the parties involved, the family, the teachers, to determine a student's needs? Whether they go, they stay in a school or they have to go to a specific school? Is that handled within the town, or is that handled through an agency with the state? I mean, how do you actually do that?
I think if I understand your question, there are special education teams where.
But that's at the
parents
town
and-
level? Is that at the
School level.
Is that the school level? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a
Right.
school.
Right.
So it's the special education department at the school.
Okay.
If a student shows signs of struggling.
Or if their
or-
needs
or
can be
their
met by the
needs- right,
district.
Yes,
Mhm.
then teams meet and do testing and evaluations and councils.
Okay.
And they go, I wish Janelle was here because she could
If
explain
the
it
needs
thoroughly.
can't be met by the district, I think it
Yeah.
starts, like what Carol said, there's a
Right.
team, and
Mhm.
from what I've heard from friends that have gone through it, I haven't personally, but I have friends that they meet with their team,
Yeah.
but it's all within the district, the principal and the
Okay.
teachers.
Yeah. One
Okay,
thing
so
I
it's
can
just-
tell you that
The
we-
family, obviously.
We do
Yeah.
our best to meet the needs of the
Mhm.
students in our district.
Right, and they have every incentive to
Yeah,
keep
we
the,
do.
keep
And,
Yeah,
and
the
the
student
parents
in
want it
district.
too.
Yes.
most of
Like,
the time.
we have a new special education teacher recommended in this budget. The reason for that is because we know we have students coming up the pipeline that need
That-
certain
yeah.
help. So we know this teacher will help those students, and
Mhm.
by doing that, we don't have to send these students out, hopefully, right?
Mhm.
So we're doing everything in the district to not have a $700,000
Mhm.
line item like this, you
So,
know?
so,
Yeah.
Nancy, I'm so simple, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I was just saying, I was
Julie.
asking, so there
Yeah.
isn't really a mechanism at the state level right now for how students get assigned out of district?
No, it's not.
It's all-
at the
it's
school
all
level.
at the
It's
school
level.
right,
School level,
the
yeah.
school and district
Okay.
level, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Nancy, suppose you have a student that has special education needs, you know, in the district, and it's something that, in theory, at least we could handle. It's not something that's so difficult for us, right? So it's unmanageable. Can you give me a thumbnail kind of estimate? Is like, okay, if they go out of district versus staying in the district, or what's a percent? What's a ballpark kind of number? What's the differential there?
Didn't you say this was only
so-
2 students that was $700,000 up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm looking at the things like the projected increase in the private tuition and, you know, the transportation. I mean, do you have a sense of how much more it costs the school district if a special education student if that family elects to go out of the district? I'm assuming, or the team says we can't do it, you know, you
Yeah.
finally get to that point.
So-
Because we're
Just
putting.
off the top of my head, I don't have like all the figures in front of me, but I believe, and I can't remember which school it was, but so we'll just go with ballparks here. We
Yeah.
have 300 and something students on an IEP. So those students need special education services. And then we have approximately 14 students that are out of district currently. And so dollar amount wise, I would have to dig into it further, but that can kind of give you a percentage of student wise. Does that help a little bit?
So we're already doing quite a bit of in-district work.
Oh, yes.
Right,
Oh,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. So that's why, you know, you see these requests for BCBA, occupational therapist, music therapy, vision therapy. That's all to help our in-district students. Yep.
So
Yep.
I think my question, Nancy, is, and don't answer it if it's going to be crazy to do, but if we take 14 of those out of that 300 and look at what it costs to provide education to those 14, and then line it up to the 14 that went out of district, are we talking 3 times as much? Are we talking, do you have any sense of that?
So I can tell you, for this fiscal year, for our students who are out of district, it's projected to be 1.4 million. And that is for 13 students.
That's just at Tohoto.
Nope,
Or-
that's for the whole entire district.
So that's
Currently.
BMS and Boylston
yep,
also?
yep.
Okay.
Again, that one number was 1 point.
14 students, 1.4 million. And honestly, I think we had an additional add-in since this figure, so I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's a little higher.
So I guess you could say 100 grand, 100,000 per student.
Yeah.
Student.
As a
Right.
thumbnail.
Versus the
Yeah.
cost of a special education
Right.
teacher servicing multiple children. who could
Right,
be-
right. This is
have a
the,
caseload.
Carol, you follow me where I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to go. I'm
do.
trying to
You're
understand.
figure out what, a special education teacher, of which Berlin, for example, has 2 special
Okay.
education teachers. Their caseloads range from anywhere from 15
Oh,
to
I know.
20 students
Right.
apiece, varying needs, disabilities that they're addressing.
Sure.
And then they have the paraprofessionals that come in. Those are largely paid for by the grants that we get, that Nancy was mentioning before in special education. They support those students as well with the special educators. They're not, some may be certified as teachers, but they don't come in as teachers, so they're support staff. But so you figure a salary of 75 to 100,000, right, for a teacher, depending on the
Mhm.
number of years they've been there, versus 100 to 300,000 to send the child out,
Yeah.
to out of district.
Mhm.
Facilities, because it depends on the need and well, it's facilities that meet those needs. Many of them are physical needs.
I was just going to say, it might not even be the teacher. It's not even necessarily
Right.
being able to provide the education
Right.
piece.
Right.
It's being able to provide the space that they need to be in and
Right.
everything that goes along with
And
that,
everything
which we
that-
might.
Many medical issues,
Right.
right, that they have, right?
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily. It's not a matter of just hiring teachers to bring those 13 kids back into the district. It's
Yes.
that
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
not
even
enough.
physically.
Right. It's
It
not
would-
possible.
You can't physically put them in our schools.
Right.
No, and in Boylston, they have the Bridges program, which was meant to help highly special needs children, to keep them in district.
Mhm.
But from what I've seen, and again, when I started on school committee a year and a half ago, that was my first question. I'm like, what? Can you say that again? Can you explain that number to me again, how that works per child? I was absolutely blown away. But then in my experience and seeing some of the needs, to Carol's point, it's physical, it's medical. It's not, oh, if we hire this person, what's the cost difference? It's that being in a public school in that environment physically doesn't work for specific children, and they need to go somewhere else where their needs are met and they can learn and grow.
Well, I wouldn't expect that you could reduce out-of-district students for special ed to zero. That clearly, to me,
No.
I understand that difficulty. I'm
Could you
just,
take some out?
yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know.
So-
I'll try to put on the special ed hat for 2 seconds versus the technology. So if Janelle
Please.
was here, she would say, even if we could bring a kid back in and have all the needs met, they're isolated, and that is not really providing the education for that kid that is going into a program where there may be 4 or 5, there are peers, there are, they have all those needs, but they're not in isolation. And so providing everything in a room for a kid that might have to go out wouldn't meet the needs, and it wouldn't meet the standards of
Well,
what
sure.
we have to do legally
Sure.
for that kid.
And also Janelle did mention when she spoke in Boylston that this number is low compared to other districts. I think she said we
Yes.
were at like 1%, right, Nancy?
Yes.
So, believe it or not, this is not crazy. This is not unusual, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think this might help you a little bit too. If you just look at Berlin Memorial without out-of-district tuitions, in just special education alone, it comes in at about 1 million.
That's a good point.
Does that help? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I was looking, so you said there was, the 300 students are on IEP. You said that, what's the total enrollment? I don't have BES on here. I've got 517 for Tohoto, 200 for BMS, so we got
So
717.
total, we're at like,
Just over 1,000?
with just your town and Tohoto?
Well, you said there was 300 total students like on an IEP.
Approximately. Not-
Right, I mean,
not
give
positive
it
on it.
range, right.
Yeah.
So what's, but you said that covers BES, BMS, and Tohoto, right?
Positive.
BES has about 300 kids. There's
Yeah,
about
I think
About
that.
300
1,000 in
kids.
the district, but Nancy's not
I
positive on
think
the
that was
300
just
kids
for
on
one
IEP.
school. I don't know.
No, there's not 300 kids on one school on an IEP. You mean,
No. Okay.
BES has about 300.
Right, and there's 200 at BMS, you
So
got,
it must have been for the
About
entire
1066.
district.
That
Right.
makes
Must have
sense,
been for the entire
Nancy. That
district.
makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Right,
So
so
that's
it's-
30% on IEP.
yeah, it's actually trying to get
Yeah,
to,
which makes-
it's approximately 3%.
Which makes sense, because
Okay.
IEPs range from, I need some help reading or staying focused, there's a huge range, right?
Yeah.
For children that fall into that.
So you could have like
median.
modifications, like they just need,
Yeah.
take their test in a different room, or
Yeah,
have,
That's a 50.
is that part of that, or?
I think IEP is a little more than that.
It's a little bit
You
more
have
than
a IEP, you have to
You
have
have
a
to
dis-
qualify.
you have a
Oh, it has to be an
disability.
actual, okay.
Right.
And there's a whole
Yeah.
process that they go through to
Yeah.
determine.
Okay, so
that.
then you then also are helping students who don't fall in the IEP
Right, and then that's
category, but they
another
also have
right.
needs that
That
have
falls
to
under
be.
general education.
Right,
Okay,
Yep.
right. And they may get a 504s, that's accommodations for specific learning issues that, or handicaps that they may have. So it's a little bit different, but that's
oh,
general.
okay, I was always grouping this all together,
Yeah,
so.
Or you have children who get Title I services, if you've heard of that, from tutors that they just need that little extra dose of something, whether it's math or
Mhm.
ELA. They have tutors who do that work, and then we pay for that through the grant that we do. So,
Yeah.
lots of different levels of
Yeah.
service.
Okay, so some of those would come by, so you're saying is that you have these more complicated issues that's under the IEP.
Yeah.
Some would come over because of just general testing or what was noticed within the classroom.
It could be,
It's
yeah,
instituted
it
by
could.
the teacher, they say,
Yeah.
okay, this is what,
Could be a request from a parent.
Parent-driven,
Or-
teacher-driven.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of the decisions are made in isolation, though. They have a team, there is a team that gets together instructional support teams that first look at a child's needs and start to try to remediate some of the issues they're seeing to see if that matter, if that helps and makes a difference. Then they typically move into the IEP process, and they start to look at the potential for disabilities there. So it happens over months. It could happen over a year. Depends on how they, what they discover, and they keep bringing that back to the children's needs, child's needs back to the table again, before they're certain that there is a disability they need to address. And as Megan said, it could be small, could be something isolated in one area of learning, or it could be significant. Academic, behavioral, it runs the gamut.
So Nancy, I lit this whole thing off, but it's a little bit like my question about the custodian. It's like, well, if you do it in-house versus doing it out, and how much do you, what's the cost to the towns, and is there something budget-wise that we in the towns could help the school district get that would keep more in,
Right.
I'm throwing you a softball in a way, because
Right.
because I think there
So-
may be some
Yep.
there may be some benefit there. There may not be. I
Right.
don't know enough detail.
Right. So I think when you look at the budget and you see line items, like you see the one here, PT services, music therapy, those are all to keep our students in, right? Because those are, right, those are.
So I'm sticking in the special ed context
Yep.
right now, but
Yep.
I realize there's a broader context to that. But
Yep.
my question really is in that special education area.
Yep.
But even there, you're saying things like having
That's
the
all
music.
special education.
That is
but I-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
All right, where are we?
Yeah.
We're looking at Tohoto, and we're
So
looking
if you look at Tohoto, increased
first page.
needs, the Tohoto, see that where it says special education?
Oh, yeah, there it is, music therapy. My
Yep.
apology. I thought it was just music. I
Yep.
didn't see the music therapy piece. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's an example of, we have increased needs for those students. And,
Yeah.
I don't know the details about the students or anything, but that's an example of why we're trying to have the services and the support in-house.
So at a minimum, we're not paying that 14% tuition to the private schools?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
And the transportation in-district is less than if you're transporting out-of-district, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some at long
Yeah.
distances,
Yes.
because
All right.
it's challenging to get our students who are going out of district to specific facilities. Some of them can be quite far away, closer to the Boston area. I mean,
Right.
they're all over. It's whatever we can get our children into, or we try to get them into facilities that'll meet their specific needs. So, yeah, it could be long-range traveling for those children as well.
Yeah, so the special education increase to the transportation for those two out-of-district students is 12,000, just to give you an example. Yeah.
For the 14% projected increase in private district tuitions, is this what you mentioned last time, that the state allows up to a 14% increase in what anybody that was already doing private tuition, or having out-of-district going to the, or I guess out-of-district student? So you're going with the potential of 14%, because
Right,
that's what the
yes.
state caps it at.
Capped it at, but
Yeah,
it has
and that's what they're
increased it
telling us to
significantly
project.
up to 14%.
Yeah.
Is it typical that each year it's like they cap it at 14%, or what's been like
I
the
was
previous
This was a
year?
shock.
Yeah,
This
this
was
was-
something that districts all over the Commonwealth are reeling about, because they did not see that coming at all.
It's normally 3 to 4.
It's normally at
Yeah.
3 to 4, or capped at 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
No,
It's
yeah.
not capped. This is what the increase is going to be.
Right.
Well, the
14%.
last time they said it was, the state capped it at 14%, or allowed up to a 14%.
Right.
So, but you don't know what the actual increase will be.
We were told to
Right. Project.
to project 14%.
Because we don't
So I
know what
think-
these facilities are
right.
going to bring it up.
They're projecting it to be a 14% increase. Yeah.
But wouldn't the
Okay.
facility do the maximum that they could?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a logical,
Right.
I think that's a logical assumption.
Yeah, I don't know what the cap has been in the prior years, but I can tell you that it's always around 3 to 4%. Yeah, it's very rare that I've seen any out-of-district tuitions come in higher than that. So this was drastic. Yeah.
So this is something that more kind of baffles me / a complaint against the state.
Mhm.
I just read an article recently that the state has surpassed over $4 billion in marijuana sales. They tax marijuana at 20%, 3% only goes back to the local communities. It just baffles me beyond belief that they don't carve out some of that 17% for education, especially when you're talking about it being like a luxury tax or a, what do they call it? Not a luxury tax, a
Vice tax.
sin tax.
Sin
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. That's not necessarily the best word, but
All those good things.
that's what they
All
call
the
it.
fun things in life.
Yeah,
That's
does
Sin's Roman
anyone
Catholic.
ever talk? I just, it baffles me that they never did an allocation for education for any of these things, whether you're talking about special education, McKinney-Vento, I mean, anything. And it's like, where's all, I would just love to know where all the money's going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do too.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna mention that to our rep and senator next time I
Yes,
talk to
exactly.
them. Because, no, I mean, since 2018, over $4 billion in sales. So you talk about 20%
Wow.
of that, that's a lot of
It's
money.
remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. One of the things you'll also notice here, in one of our bullet points, is we're looking to put funds into a special education reserve fund.
I wanted to ask about that. I'm
Yeah.
interested. Yes, thank you.
So that is, a lot of school districts have started that. And that is, so during the school year, you get a kiddo who has to now go out of district because all of these needs have risen and you have to send them out of district, but you don't have it in your budget. So we're trying to build up funds so we can afford to pay for that instead of going back to the towns mid-year.
We're taking
So-
that.
Yeah,
So
or
we
taking it out of, right.
Shall we ask Massachusetts to seed those funds for us? These are their mandates.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally seed them with
Yeah.
things that are
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
grown in the
Yeah.
state. I think, but.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sorry, I had to get on my
I
soapbox.
literally ask myself that,
That's
when, again, you have like the
Yeah.
exact same questions that I started. I'm like, if
Yeah.
these are state mandates, how come the state doesn't pay for them? How can they force these towns, because they're pushing it down on the taxpayers?
Well, okay, I mean, on the one hand, I think the state is paying for them, but the way they're paying for them is really bollocksed up. It really does not make sense. And if you could get to a rational way of doing that, then actually, you know, I can see a view of this where, oh, yes, we fund the mandates, you know, that's what this money is, but it's coming in a day late and a dollar short.
Right.
So
Yes.
At a
that
much lower
leaves
rate.
Yeah.
this
At a
committee.
lower rate, yeah.
This
Right.
committee's got really hard decisions to look at, and this piece of budgeting makes absolutely no sense, and it could be fixed.
Yeah.
So I really like the idea of the reserve fund, because you don't know year to year what your
Right.
population's going to look like and what the need is,
Right.
and that's how you do good budgeting. This
Right.
is how you manage the financial piece of it.
Right.
So, but where does that, you know, how do you start that fund? And I think we ought to ask Massachusetts to start it for us,
Yeah.
at least us little districts,
Yeah.
because we don't have the mass to be able to accumulate that.
Yeah. It's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough.
What year is that fund? I know you started only a couple of years ago. Do you know what year are you into it and how much, what's the balance at?
Yeah, I was gonna say
This
probably
year-
only the second.
Year.
This is year two.
Yeah.
Okay.
This current year's year two,
And do you know what you've gotten into that?
Good question.
approximately 15,000.
15,000?
Not a huge cash cow.
That wouldn't be enough for,
No.
it's not enough for anything.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Be like a month.
We're trying.
And this is for across the entire district, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I have it increased for fiscal year '24.
Oh.
I did
Oh,
it.
boy.
Let's see what I put for this one.
Can I make one
have-
suggestion for next year when you do your thing?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would be to say general budget 77% of the increase. Because it makes it sound like this is a 77% increase to the general budget. And I know now that since those two numbers add up to 100, but when I first looked at it, I thought that's what you guys were saying.
Yep, right here. Thank you.
Just for clarity.
Yeah, no,
Both of
great.
them. I mean, the first one where it
Yeah.
was general budget
Finding out what the increase is.
Yep.
increase was
I
13%.
appreciate that.
Of that 13%.
Yeah.
Total, 43% is for the general budget, 57 is for special ed.
Yeah, these are all increases
On page one.
only. Thank you for that.
We just refer to it as a share.
These
Yeah,
go
yeah,
up to
yeah.
100, and we
Share.
talked about this at the last meeting, but they were,
20% share.
yeah.
Just assume that. But yeah, I.
Yeah.
It's
No.
just a point of
Little
clarification, it
things
just
you
made it,
just don't, yeah, I appreciate that.
Or of the total increase of 13%, 43%, whatever. I mean, just, it was just a little confusing to say general
Yeah.
budget, 43%
If you go
increase.
back to the, I'll change that, but if you go back to the front page, to that box up on the top.
Yep,
It does show you like the overall, so your level service only, overall for Tohoto is 13%.
Right.
Your above level service for Tohoto is 22%. And
right,
that includes your level service.
right, but it's also very helpful to
Oh,
know
we
how
have
much
it.
of it is general budget and how much is
Oh,
special ed.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So I'm glad that you break that out.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that you don't break it out like that, I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting that you say
Yeah, I
of
thought due
the, of the total.
to the amount, that it's important for people to see.
Yeah, Stan,
what we
I think,
spend.
may I speak for you, just
Of
needs a little
course.
box that has labels on the
Yeah.
top of the
And
rows.
he'll get that.
So that
Yeah.
he can see exactly what that
Yeah,
means.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like text myself, but it's not good for everybody.
Well, and I'm just nervous that taxpayers,
Will.
I have the
yes.
same-
well, just, I mean, if they're not really tuned into the numbers like we are, I mean, they just look at it and they say a 43% increase of the general
Exactly.
budget.
Oh my gosh,
Like, they're not,
exactly.
they,
Yeah.
you know,
Someone
it's
that's not
bits of
even looking
information that
Yeah.
they're pulling out of this one little section, because it's printed right there in
Their
front
eyes
of
are
them.
gonna go right to that, so you wanna make sure they're
I
reading it
mean,
correctly.
right.
Absolutely.
Right, like
Yep.
7% increase, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll definitely will.
You don't even need to put the percents in, just put the total, and this portion is here, this portion is here.
Yeah, that might even just eliminate it completely, to just
Yeah.
say general budget increase, yes.
Percents can give people the wrong
Oh, and
idea.
just do the dollars?
Just do
Mhm,
the
Possibly, yeah,
dollars.
that would be a way
Yeah.
to
Just
look
do
at
the
it too.
dollars. Thank you,
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
because I had to I struggled with that when I first looked at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12, right? Would be on that.
Or to even flip it and start with general budget, 556 increase, special education increase 733, total increase 1.2. Just because that's what when you're normally just adding two numbers
like
together to
adding
get
it
the
together.
total.
Yeah.
You're starting with the total, and so it makes it a little bit more confusing as to
Whatever
what those
makes it-
other numbers
yep.
below are.
Sounds good, thank you.
Mhm. So, on to your 20%
All right, we're.
above level, I should say above level
Above
service,
level.
22%.
Okay, above level.
Yep.
Alright, so, for the above level service increase only, it comes to 900,000.
Okay.
It's split amongst general budget and special education budget. The general budget is 690,000, and special education is 209,000. So it's split amongst the categories, same as Berlin Memorial, with you got your personnel. So we're requesting an additional assistant principal at our middle school, high school, an additional math teacher. Now that coincides with, we have in here our athletic director going full-time.
Right.
Currently, our athletic director is a .80 FTE. So we're requesting that the athletic director go full-time, and then he currently teaches 3 classes of math, and then we'll hire a new math teacher for a new math program that we would like
Well,
to be
part of
taught.
that,
or-
right, part of that math teacher's responsibilities will be to teach financial literacy. And we want to make that a mandatory class for all students who are graduating from Tohoto.
Yeah.
I feel that that is, and we've heard a lot of feedback from the public about that, and having that knowledge for those students as they graduate, so.
Yeah. And then you have your floating nurse that you've already seen, your technology technician that you've already seen, the special education teacher that I mentioned earlier for kiddos that are coming up the pipeline to help fit their needs. And you have your occupational therapist and your board certified behavioral analyst.
And that's part of that other, part of that position that we've mentioned already.
Right.
Yeah.
I would also add with the athletic director going full-time, well, he currently teaches 3 classes, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Tohoto has a rotating schedule. So he can be in class teaching math in the middle of the afternoon when they're canceling games, the buses aren't coming, whatever's going on with the sports programs, he doesn't know that. So that's caused a lot of issues with parents and communication there. Plus, I think the sports program has gotten more complex as the years have gone on with certain mandatory requirements that they have, that the athletic directors have to be involved in. And I think that position just warrants somebody who's doing that work full-time currently, and who is not right now. So he's also, this past year, he's starting a program now, speaking of special education, for children with special needs, so that they can get after-school athletics, special programs that enable those children to have that for them as well. So he's bringing new ideas, new opportunities to the students, and that's important for us.
And then under teaching and learning, under general education, there's a mathematic program, a new mathematical program for grades 6 through 8, a LabQuest platform for chemistry, physics, and AP biology. We would like to start bringing back some of our after-school clubs, so we would like an additional late bus on Wednesdays. And as in the other schools, we have the Portrait of the Graduate, social emotional curriculum, and our common literacy. And the same under special education, our wraparound family services, and paraprofessional training for ABA services. And under technology, we're requesting 3 3D printers for a technology and engineering course, replacement of our music technology platform with laptops, a 3-year subscription to Gizmo, a computer numerical control for our technology class, and our Power School upgrade that we spoke about earlier. And then for some items that weren't in the district improvement plan, but we are requesting a laptop cart for our science department, update AP psychology textbooks, and update physics lab equipment, drama club supplies. We would really like to looking to enhance our drama club. The Special Education Reserve Fund, which I discussed earlier, various software, same as the earlier ones, it's split amongst all the schools, the outdoor storage container. We'd like to pilot a program for grade 7 social studies, and we would like to request that our guidance counselors work additional 5 days over the summer to kind of start preparing for the students coming into school. And under special education, same thing, you have your Gorton Gillingham training and a new, if the teacher gets approved, they need a desk and a chair. So.
And again, these are just out of these are part of your numbers, they're just out of
they're like the
they're not in the plan.
The top highlights,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yes, they're
Yes.
part of the figures down
Yes,
below,
okay.
absolutely, yes, yep. So brief overall, for your personnel, it's a request of $542,000 at 60%. That's the biggest out of the above level service increases. And then your technology is at $207,000. And then your curriculum and services is at $135,000. What can I answer for you?
Where do we get the money?
Yeah.
A question on the things for level services. What are any of these listed in there where you had previous grants that have disappeared since, from COVID funding and stuff like that were maybe funded that way, or from some other grants, and now grants are gone, and you're trying, for things that were added either over the last year or two, but now they're going into the regular operating budget. So do you have any numbers on any grants that have lost or have decreased?
So I have that, but it's not for level service. It's for above level service.
Okay, like,
So we had an ESSER grant, hold on. So there's a couple ESSER grants. We had we got a bunch of ESSER grants when COVID happened. So our ESSER 3 grant, we had our adjustment counselor being paid out of that, which currently isn't paid out of that anymore.
which is listed on there? What was
And
what
that's under
counselor?
Tohoto, right?
Tohoto and Boylston.
Yep.
That's not Berlin. Berlin Memorial.
Is that, do you have a line item on them, or highlighted here in that?
It's highlighted in Boylston.
Wait, what? Oh, Boylston, that was. You mean,
Wait, what was the question?
Yes, part of the.
What was the position she mentioned that,
Oh.
the ESSER 3 grant?
Oh, the adjustment counselor.
The adjustment counselor.
That was a Boylston.
And she was
position.
Boylston,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
Gloria
Boylston.
Pierce.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Boylston, all right.
But there was,
nothing-
there was the one highlight for Berlin for the math tutor was paid
Right.
through a
Yeah.
grant last year.
Okay, how much was the, I mean, is the grant completely gone, or is it less?
No, I didn't bring this year's grants with me. I'm very sorry,
For an
but I
actual
can,
dollar.
I can send them to you to go over what,
Yeah, but I think I can explain. The math tutor ended up becoming, a portion of that person's salary was paid for by the Title I grant last year. That position was moved into a coaching role for the district. So while we were able to fund that through Title I last year, we don't have that funding. We're using that for tutors now, for actual math tutor over in Berlin Memorial. So that position helped to fund him last year, then it was rolled into the budget for this year across.
Do you know
the two
approximately
elementaries.
what the dollar amount would be on what the Title I funding was reduced by, at least? I mean, just a general range.
The Title I for, let me think for a minute,
For-
because I write them.
I missed the question.
Was it 20,000?
For this
It
year?
wasn't that much, I was gonna say about 35,000.
So I kept the Title I the same for fiscal year '24 as fiscal year '23, and it's
Yep.
20,000.
Oh, 20.
20,000.
Julie wrote it down
Oh.
from our meeting. I can't take credit for that.
That was very good, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
you were writing
Yeah.
all her numbers down.
So,
Yeah, we
to
wrote it
also
down.
clarify, the only existing COVID grant that is rolling, that I have a little bit of funds left over for fiscal year '24 is one of our ESSER grants, and that's for 57,000. So all the rest of the money will be used up this current year.
This present fiscal year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But the things that all of those paid for, how much of that is being put into the budgets for this
I
year?
wish I had that with me, and I don't, but I
Okay.
will gladly get it tomorrow morning and send it to you. I didn't think of bringing it, I apologize. It's a great question.
Thanks.
Yes. And an important one.
Do you have any breakdown on the Tonto numbers by, between Berlin and Boylston? I mean, what would our share be looking at increase?
Not at this point in time. Usually the assessments, well, I don't have it for two reasons. One, the governor's not releasing the numbers until March. Two, they really don't get done until the school committee does their final vote for the budget, which will be February 28th. So I can tell you, after the school committee does their vote on February 28th, they gave us kind of like a manual way to go about to get the assessments, since the governor's budget's not out yet, and I kind of have started that behind the scenes. So I can give you rough figures after the school committee makes their vote.
But are you talking more the
Yeah.
percentage of what's Boylston and what's Berlin?
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
You're
so
talking about
students.
assessments.
No, students.
Oh, I
Well-
thought you were
well, the
talking
assessments.
about.
The assessment.
Well, I mean, it
You're
ends up
talking-
being the assessment, but I mean, we usually talk about
Oh, I
60,
have
40,
that.
59, 40.
Yeah, so the students are,
It's on the enrollment.
If you go, there's an enrollment page, and if you look at the bottom box, that's the students from your town.
But what percentage of, so, all right, so 156 of 517.
Correct. No.
What's
that work out to?
I'm not doing that.
In your head, and keep your shoes on.
Yeah, it's 9:25. I'm not doing that math in my head.
Oh, time to go.
Crazy?
I'm running some math, but it's preliminary, so I'm not gonna share any numbers. But one thing I wanted to say
30%, which
um,
is way lower than it's been.
is, you know, I've kind of been looking at how
It's usually
can
like
we,
40, 60.
you know, meet our needs, meet
Doesn't
your
make
needs,
sense.
and I'll tip my hand to you. You
156
probably
divided
won't
by
find a more
517 is
school supportive
30%.
town administrator. I am a public school graduate myself, a very proud public school graduate. And
Except
I
for
understand the
the fact that you're saying
importance
that
and the
we're
need. My
losing
folks still live in the
work
town.
to-
My sister and I grew up in.
That too aspect
And it just opened a
that
lot of opportunities for both of
Boylston
us.
is.
So
So
I
guess
really
there's a
do
chance
value
that
it and think that
Berlin's
it's really
portion of the town
important.
goes down to 30%.
My concern is just
Wow.
where are we
That's
going to
historically
find it
low.
without trying
Our
to,
estimates might be
you know,
historically
take it
That's
out of the
right, we
other
haven't
side
seen
of
them
the
yet.
budget. And that's the biggest concern, and looking
It's
at
next
all
week,
of our
right?
revenues, and looking at a 12 and 13% increase, you know, even looking at just that, I would have to make some pretty significant cuts to the existing budget. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. So it's certainly by no means a, you know, this isn't necessary or important. It's trying to figure out how do we do that balance. And we, you know, obviously will continue to have more conversations as the numbers come out. But it's a balancing act because, you know, everything's important. You want to have a community that has good schools, recreation, public safety. Everything is important on all fronts. So we have to figure out how we can somehow make it all work.
Yeah, and this
So-
community in particular has always supported that Berlin Memorial is their gem, and they've always been there for us.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we appreciate
So-
it.
No, my commitment to you is I will work with you as much as we can, and we'll see what we can do. You know, it's gonna be a challenge, and, you know, I'm a little scared, I won't lie. But we'll
Yeah, this is
we'll
hard.
keep dialoguing and trying to see what we can do.
This
And
is
that's what I
definitely
said
hard.
when I came, when we first started. We
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, we
No.
recognize that this is a huge reach.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that talking with you tonight, and if you had any other questions as you look at this, it's clear to you why this budget looks like this. And I think even just the level service budget alone is shocking because of the special education costs.
And I think the need is certainly well explained and well documented. It's just how now do we take that next step and go about funding it?
So let me ask you this, this has been my question, and I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, I'm like literally don't understand this, because I've been on school committee now a year and a half. So let's say the school committee, we're voting on this budget on February 28th. That's what, we got a week of school vacation, everyone's out, so that's like 2 weeks from now. Okay, you guys aren't gonna come back with the solution or the final numbers, because you're still getting numbers in, as I've seen.
Right.
Same thing with Boylston. So what happens, this school committee votes and approves this budget, and the town say, this is all we're giving you. What happens at that point in time if the school committee says, all 5 of us approve this, and the town say, well, this is all you're getting? Where do we fill that gap? What happens next? Does it really just go to town meeting and it's on the residents? And if the residents push it, then what? Then what happens? What do you do if the residents say, yes, I want this budget? Well, what do you do? I like,
Right.
seriously, I just don't know.
No,
Is it an override?
No, I mean, it gets complicated on a lot of different things. I mean, for one thing, if you don't have a finance committee approval, instead of a voice vote at the town meeting, you would actually go to a paper ballot at town meeting.
That's what I thought.
Which is
It
one of
needs
the
to be on a
things
paper
that,
ballot,
right.
yes.
So that's one of the more simple things if it's pushed to that particular point. And then, like I say, but it's done at town meeting.
It's still done at town meeting, so
yeah.
do you have to be present at that town meeting, but you have to vote, people have to vote on a paper ballot?
Yes, so there's no intimidation
For
of
that item.
being, like, so most of the things that go through a voice.
Yeah, or raise
right, I mean,
hands,
it's like,
yeah.
then somebody, well, I don't wanna say no, because, no, that you do have, so you do, and it complicates things, obviously.
Yeah.
We do have
Um,
clickers
We
now.
have
Yeah, now
clickers.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We've
you do have
changed it.
we do have the clickers now,
Because
but,
you're more anonymous than
Yeah.
vote
Yes.
now? Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to, it's not gonna be tied to your voter registration, because I'm just thinking paper ballot, that's gonna take hours.
well, right, yeah, actually, I forget,
no,
that we,
So you got-
but basically,
Berlin
it
has
goes
clickers.
anonymous.
Ah, okay. I don't know about Boylston, so we'd have to find out for Boylston.
Well, the
that's a question.
paper ballot goes pretty fast. It's slower than a voice vote, obviously, or a hand vote, but it goes
Yeah.
fast. It's just yes, no, you put it in
Who
a
counts
bucket with
them?
somebody. Huh?
Who count the paper
We
ballot?
have
They have, like,
election,
the
we have
moderator
volunteers
elects
who
people.
work the
So
town
you
meeting
find,
is
you
elected.
find out on that night.
Oh, you find out shortly after the vote is taken.
It'll add like a half an hour to town, like if we were to have a paper ballot on one portion of the budget, it would probably add 20 minutes to
20
a half an
minutes, yeah.
hour
Because
to
we
town
would
meeting.
know, because
'Cause
you
that-
would
You'd
know
know
ahead
in the
of
moment,
time.
you'd know in the
So we
moment.
know ahead of time your stance on this, and if your stance doesn't match the school committee's stance, then we know we need to get the paper ballots ready.
Well, I think, Scott, I don't know, you've been
Well,
around.
it won't be
you've been doing
paper this way, because we do now have the clickers that they
And
got.
that's actually the
funded
moderator's
Through that, but it
call.
would it would go to anonymous at that point.
It would be part of the motion.
But is
You
it
would
school
have to
committee
change
or
the-
is it the school committees? You guys are gonna come back with your suggestion.
Recommendation.
Is it the school committees, gonna be on the school committee's vote? Or can Carol and Nancy override the school committee and
So-
say,
So, hang on, Megan, just watching things over the years at town meeting, and I've gotten to town meeting except when I'm away on business or whatever, but my experience in the town of Berlin, if the finance committee votes in favor of something, recommends that at town meeting, that the citizens vote for this thing, vote positive, generally it goes. And if finance committee says, don't vote for it, we don't think the costs are where they ought to be, generally the citizens in the town vote no on
Yeah.
that, whatever that is, whatever that article is. But we have a budget, and Kristen, you gotta help me with this, because I'm not, I don't pay it enough attention, but we're gonna vote on a budget,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know whether we vote, we do vote in some chunks, don't we? This is what I'm not
Well, we
remembering how
vote,
we
we
do.
vote each line item, I mean,
Well, you
No,
vote
it's
like
chunks.
public
What?
safety.
Oh, I see what
Yeah.
you get.
Yeah.
Government,
It'd be a school.
So we could, so the
recreation,
town could
yeah.
pass part of the budget or all of the budget. It would be put to the citizens to vote on, motions made on line items 100 through 120, public safety.
Yep.
What you vote. So that's how it would run down. I don't know the process with respect to the school committee and the district and how you work that out if there's, the vote is we can't do it.
if FinCom says, no, we don't wanna do this, the school says, no, we don't wanna do this, the school committee still says, no, we're doing this.
Right, I mean, you will basically go to,
It goes to town floor.
right, it will go to town forum for, on this.
I'm not
and-
saying that's gonna happen,
Right.
because obviously I can't speak on behalf of the committee, but I'm
No,
just
no.
trying to understand this, because we're in this predicament here where we're putting forth
Right.
this budget, that we haven't done something like this in previous years. This is, yes, unprecedented. And I know, we took a vote Tuesday, no, we've taken a vote on the preliminary, and it was unanimously approved by the school committee. So we've scoured through this, we're well-versed in this. It was already approved by the school committee. So, obviously, I don't know what's gonna happen on February 28th, but just based on past meetings and past, conversations we've had, this school committee supports this. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
tough, especially now we're February 8th, we've got 20 days left, of which a week we're all, do you know what I'm saying? To kind of meet somewhere where, do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm just trying to reconcile what's gonna happen on February 28th when we're presented with, if you guys make some recommendations and Nancy throws them in and the school committee's like, no, wait a minute, where's this piece and where's this other piece? I don't approve this.
We
Go
have to-
ahead, sorry.
June's been
babbling.
here a long time. She
Yeah,
knows
June-
Hey,
in a good way.
Normally, the finance committee would make a recommendation on on a balanced budget, is what they would do within the funding sources of the town. if it's not what you agree upon,
The committee.
then the committee would have to make a motion at town meeting to increase it. But with that, you would
Oh.
also have to explain that this would mean your taxes are gonna go up above what the finance committee is recommending and budgeting. So it can be done, and then it would go to the vote by clicker. With Berlin, it's a little bit different, I think, than Boylston, but I'm not 100% certain. But with Berlin, it wouldn't require an override.
Correct.
Boylston, I don't know how close they are to their levy limit. So if they're very close, then it would have to go as an override, which is a ton more stuff, because then it has to actually go to the polls.
That's the Prop 2.5 that you hear. in
Right,
Jim's.
so we have to,
So if Boylston said, we don't have the money, we can't do it without doing an override, then you would also have to do a vote at the polls to increase over and above the levy limit.
And that's a two-part, because you're talking.
Yes, because one's at floor,
Right.
town meeting, and one's at the ballot.
and when do you do the ballot? Do you wait until
You have
November?
to have another
Or
election.
you'd have a separate special
Which is a
election?
has a
Yeah.
cost in and of itself,
Yeah.
and if, it depends on the funding, so if the funding's not available to do that, then you have to wait until you can
Until the
combine
town
it
can
with an
fund the
existing
election.
election.
Yeah, because I mean, even though I understand what you're saying is that, okay, no, this is what we need, but if you don't have the funding sources to get it from the towns,
Right.
that's where you have to.
I have a technical question, and if the override fails,
You get
then
what
you have to,
get.
then you just have to.
Yep.
You don't
You're
get,
gonna
yeah,
have to
you get
cut your
nothing. I know, I do
Yeah.
understand what happens if the override fails. If we push and then I
Yeah.
understand that we get nothing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually better if you can come to a compromise.
Yeah.
Completely
Because
understand.
With Tohoto, now that you're a district, it's a little bit different, because now as a whole, kind of both towns have to come to an agreement as far as, what can they afford.
I
And
guess
then you're gonna have to, because I mean, it's hard to make cuts, I mean, we all know.
it's gonna be very hard, and I guess my biggest question is, we've got 20 days. So like, how are you guys gonna come and make recommendations, and Boylston's gonna come and make recommendations, and it's gonna be all proposed before the school committee votes on February 28th?
Right,
It's
this is,
not.
no, there's gonna be uncertainties, and June pointed out the thing that I neglected to say, which is our job, is that we gotta present a balanced budget.
Yep.
And so we can't just magically produce revenue,
Yeah,
Right.
right?
It's not
That
out.
doesn't happen.
exactly. So you guys
And-
don't have that information yet?
No, and so the pressure goes back to the school committee, to the school district, and say, okay, what are the realities here? What can these towns actually do? And that's why I was expressing frustration about how the state participates in this
Right.
whole funding, because it's making us go through this agony, which I think is unnecessary.
All of us.
And the
Right,
timing.
so it isn't like,
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
sitting up here doesn't support what the schools are trying to do,
Oh, I get it, yeah.
right?
Right.
But it is, June was really helpful to point out, it is our job to look at them, make sure that's balanced.
Right.
Revenues that we project and actually know about, and then what we're gonna spend, and then,
So this vote is gonna be on budget as is in 2 weeks. And if the FinComs come back in March or April and say, well, this is what we're recommending, then the school committee's gonna have to vote again if we decide to compromise.
I think, Megan, you need to have I think you need to have a fallback plan
Yeah.
on what to do. Because there's gonna be a limit on the flexibility to balance budgets in
Because
the
I
two
have to say,
towns.
it's very rare that you come with your first budget and we go, yeah, you're getting them, that normally doesn't happen.
Right.
Usually,
No,
'cause
I
it's
totally
like
get
with
that.
all budgets, you kind of have
So
to.
June,
do
if on
it.
town
It's just-
floor there is that, say, worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
if there is, school committee makes a motion, who then presents the percent increase? Is that,
Board of Assessors?
No, that would be those, you guys would do that.
You make the
and-
case to the
A motion
citizens.
amended
Yeah,
on the
to
floor.
amend
So
it
how
on the
would we
floor.
figure, we'd have to work with the Board of Assessors, though?
No,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
because it would be whatever you wanted is kind of, it's hard for us to give an estimate, so I'm using numbers, don't hold me to this, because I'm just making them up. But let's just say way back when we used to have a single rate, we could say for every 100,000 that we increased the budget, it was gonna cost you $80 on your tax bill. We can't do that anymore, it's not that easy, because we have the split rate,
Yep.
where we have certain commercial rates and then we have regular rates. So we can't say to the taxpayers, if we vote what you want, it's gonna cost you an extra $500 on your tax bill.
Wait, Berlin has split rates, is that what you just said?
Mhm.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's getting late, so my brain's starting,
Yeah.
because I know Boylston has one rate, right, Carol?
Exactly,
That's-
so Boylston
So
would be
that's gonna be
easier to
so,
say.
Boylston will be, yeah, so we can kind of
Yeah.
calculate, so somebody on school committee would have to calculate that and bring that to the town.
If you wanna sell it to the taxpayers, they're gonna wanna know, well, how much is my
Well,
taxes
right,
gonna
of
go
course,
up?
right.
And you'll know in advance because we have to post the warrant, so you would know what the
Yeah.
dollar figure would be that the town would be putting forth, so you could calculate the difference and then whatever the split is. Nancy's nodding, she knows. You can figure
And I
out
think
what, at least on the
our-
Boylston side, it's easier.
Our town meeting is May 1, right?
Yes, it is.
So that
May
means
1st, so when will you guys have your?
60 days ahead, we have to have the warrant together, the budget's got to be done.
So you'll have it in March.
Yep.
March,
Right. So you-
March.
So you'll have 60 days to put together.
Our deadline
A
is
plan.
March 22nd to finalize.
March 22nd, so
Oh,
we could
yeah.
even vote on
It's
an
actually not 60
updated
days.
budget at that point. And
That's our deadline, but then yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
When do
it's
you-
gonna be hard.
Basically
for-
30
So
days.
that's your deadline, do you usually give to the schools a little bit before that? Or do we just hear on the deadline? I don't know the process, just.
Well,
We will give you a heads up, we're not going to.
do you want to go through any of this, Scott?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think some of this is messed up here. And
I think do I have an old one?
Well, I have,
I think we're
No.
okay.
As you can see.
Well,
I
we got
can
March
put myself
2nd, March
today on the
1st here,
calendar.
that's
Yeah, I think it's the
we don't
20th.
have so March 2nd is off on this.
well, we have it scheduled that on March
Yes.
1st. We'll complete our feedback to departments, boards and committees.
Deadline to finalize your report is March 22nd
Right.
for
Yeah.
FinCom, and make recommendations to the select board.
So we have a
Yeah.
March 15th date to reconsider any budget warrant articles, so that might be, March 15 might be a target date for us to come back at this
So
if
March
we need to.
15th.
And we will need to, I think.
Right, so March 1st, we're going to make our votes for the overall budget, everything that's going to go into the budget, part of which will be the schools. And then we will notify each department how much we're going to allocate for each one of those departments,
Okay.
based on their requests and based on what the town can afford. And then we will go back to each one of them and say, this is what we voted for each department. So then we invite people who did not get what they had asked for to come back and make another case as to why they actually, what else we could do possibly to make the numbers work. And we will promise to listen, and we'll probably say there's not much more we can do. But, I mean, that's the idea, is that was to give you some notice and to try to make some accommodation if we can. And then it's off, March 15th, we have to finalize, and I think the 22nd, it has to go off to the printer. So at that point, it's our recommendation, and if it's $500,000 less than what you guys are looking for, then it's gonna be up to you to have a motion at town meeting that says, we want an additional, because we're gonna vote on the individual budget, as we were talking about, the budget document is 60,
Yeah.
80 lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and so then we're gonna vote on this section, then we're gonna vote on this
Yes.
section, and then we get to the schools, and then
Yeah.
we vote for just the schools. It's not like the whole budget gets thrown out.
Right.
Because, so we're gonna vote on this one section, and if the schools wanna get up and make an amendment to that, then that's the time to try to get up and say, to get the additional funding.
And who
Because
would do that, the committee, or would that be?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be.
It's so hard, is it the district or the committee, I
It
guess?
would usually be the Berlin, well, it used to be, I don't know how it works now, it used to be the Berlin School Committee would be.
Right,
Yeah.
so there's the motion's
So
made
it
for
has
this
to be
portion of the budget,
March.
and then there's discussion. And so then it's be during the discussion that a motion would need to be made to amend it.
And it would be the same thing for both towns. The tricky thing is dealing with the two towns. Because one town could say, willing to give this, and the other town could say, we're
Well,
willing
that's
to
been a
give
problem
that.
in the past. There've
It's
been
gonna
lots of
be-
times when
it's gonna be
Berlin has said
tricky.
yes and Boylston said no, and then we have to go back and and then they have
For
to
the
go back and
numbers.
reconcile.
And you also have to remember too, I mean, one of the tricky things has always been, where it's been a one line item like with BMS, and then you have like the Tohoto with the combined students. And just going from past experience of these issues is most of the compromises usually come down against Tohoto in the past, because you basically have the situation as one town, like typically it's been in Berlin, say you just use the general numbers of 1/3 of the budget, Boylston 2/3. If what happens is if Berlin said they can only fund to this amount. What happens is every dollar that goes down there is additional $2 cut on the Boylston side, because you can't go and, you still have to keep those ratios the same.
Yeah.
So what has happened is, historically, BMS has thrived from this setup.
Exactly.
Because if we tell you to cut $80,000 or that stuff, it's oftentimes, it's been the case that what happened is usually one of the towns has not been able to meet the financial piece of it. So when that money comes back, oftentimes it looks to like go towards the elementary school. And so you have to deal with those situations
Yes.
too. Not to mention, you also are going into probably one of the worst environments to also be talking about what people's property tax bills are
I know.
like, because especially like in Berlin, as the percentage of the residential has gone up percentage-wise for valuations, while retail has gone down, it hasn't produced new money to the town. What's happening is a significant shift has gone to the residential residents.
Oh, your
And-
retail rate is lower?
Yeah.
Your tax
No,
rate?
what's
No, it's higher,
happening
but
is
it's a smaller
retail,
percentage now.
We have a larger residential, smaller.
Right,
Our
yes.
commercial proportion has gone down, and that caused things, okay?
Right, because you just have a tiny piece of that shopping mall, you don't have that full shopping
Well-
mall.
Well, no, the total value went down on the value, of values went down.
The commercial property value.
Exactly, exactly.
Gotcha.
So a key piece
Exactly.
to remember is how the levy works. So what happens is the property tax levy is your valuation of your home or your property is what ownership you have of that levy. So if the retail valuation goes down, what happens is basically even if your home did not increase in value, your percentage ownership of the levy increases.
Okay.
So what has happened is, because of COVID and other things related, what's happened is, as that percentage has gone down, it just shifts the burden to the residential. So that is happening at this time too. So you're also dealing with people going to be looking at their tax bills and going, no, wow, as it is, and then you have additional piece of the schools coming in, or whatever department it is. Of course, we're talking
When did the
schools
new
here.
one go into effect? Was it,
Well, we're on the present that they did was for fiscal year '23. That is.
The one that came out December.
Your November.
yes,
Last.
it was like, it was very, short time ago that people got this increase in their taxes, so.
By the way, I just checked, the Boylston Town Meeting is also on May 1st.
Yeah, we know, it's the same time. Yeah, so we'll split.
Yeah.
So Mike Topman will be in Berlin. He's the chair of the school committee, and then I'm the vice chair, so I'll probably be in Boylston.
Do you know where Boylston sits in their levy, how close they are to their levy limit?
I have no idea. I just know that, because we were randomly at the select board meeting where they talked about the tax rates, I know that the commercial and the residential, they decided to keep the rates the
single
same. Yep, that's the only thing I know. I should know this. I know my taxes went up, so yes, I checked my tax bill, it went up. My husband said, "What is going on?" And I said, "Let me look at this." And I did see the increase. It was this tax bill, this February one. So, yep, I hear you on that. It was a big increase.
Yeah, and that's like they say, that's one of the things you have to
Yeah.
deal with, the timing of things like that. You have to take
The
that into
timing,
consideration.
exactly. It was
I
not
mean,
great.
in some ways, it's best to try and work directly with the towns of what is best
Of
to
course.
fund, right? Because last thing you want to do is get to this case where you end up, going for something, it's defeated,
Yeah.
and you end up with less than maybe even what you were targeting
Exactly.
on that stuff. So I've been in these situations many times in the past. It all varies, and it's never easy decisions.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's tough because, as the committee, and this will be the last thing I say because I know it's late, and I don't know, Julie, you can speak to this too, maybe from Berlin. I know in Boylston, it feels like we have a lot of parental support for this district improvement plan. So this isn't just driven by the school committee operating in a vacuum. This is parents that want more, or these things that they're not wants, they're needs. And I think we have a lot of parental support from the district on this. So that's gonna be the tough thing, is figuring out the compromise. That's my only.
Scott, do you speak with Nancy then? Do you come back at some point in the next couple of weeks, next week or so, and talk with her about recommendations from the FinCom?
With Nancy.
This is Nancy.
Oh,
Oh, I'm
okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Nancy Knizzky.
Okay.
Sorry, a misintroduction.
Okay,
the business.
Megan, Grill, and Julie.
Yeah, school committee, yeah.
Do you come back and say, here's what we're thinking of, if you meet after this?
Yes,
Right.
we will be giving you, we will let you know what we're targeting on this. So it's not going to be, you're not going to get blindsided, and you're not going to get it at the last minute.
And does that come to us, I think, Megan, you were making that point earlier about before the school committee votes on the 28th?
No.
Or no?
I don't know.
That's March.
Yeah, the 28th is
March,
probably
yeah.
going to be a little
They said
tough.
March 15th.
But we still can go back.
Between the 1st and the
We're gonna have to
15th.
do a second
Yeah,
vote after that.
March.
That's what I'm, Carol, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Scott.
My concern, because we're voting.
I
we're
ran
voting
some
on this.
numbers,
Yeah.
so everybody was talking.
Yep.
If you want me to share them, it's probably a good idea just to show where we're at.
Sure.
So
They're gonna share numbers.
I.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, no problem.
Because she was just saying maybe we should, if we
No,
could change the
gosh, no.
meeting, no.
I was just gonna say, I've been running numbers.
Oh, okay.
Not that I wasn't listening. I can
No,
do
no, no,
both.
this is good.
Multitask.
So I'm multitasking over here. So I presented basically a level service and pretty much a level funded town administrator budget to the select board and the FinCom. We've been going through it kind of piece by piece over the past 6 weeks or so. So the one piece I really didn't have in there, what would be the increase amounts for the schools. So what I did was I just plugged in just a 12% and a 13% increase over the FY23 number for Berlin Memorial and Tohoto. And we would have to cut that budget by $350,000 to $400,000 to meet the 12 to 13. To meet the 20 to 22%, we would have to cut by anywhere from $900,000 to $950,000. So that is my concern, is we are really presenting a level service budget. The increases over last year are very minimal, so I have to see what we can do, but I don't know how we can even get to 350 or 400,000. So that's where my concern lies.
Yeah.
And really, this is
Send
level.
this to Nancy tomorrow, could you just?
I'm happy. So these are just, and like I said, I want to look them over again tomorrow, but I've looked them over 4 or 5 times while we were sitting here, because I'm like, that's kind of a scary number. And I didn't want to throw that out there until I had some firmness on it. And we went over revenues today, June and I, and tried to look at local receipts and where we could increase, if at all possible, given where we're at for the first half of FY23. And there's not a lot in terms of where we have building permits or, excise tax. We really tried, because our tax bills were gonna go up substantially in '23, and they still did go up, but we took a lot that we could in '23 so that we didn't see a gigantic jump there. And there's just not a lot of room. We're really very close to the line of what we can take in terms of local receipts, to the point of don't feel comfortable taking more revenue now than that. Now, I will say that doesn't include state aid numbers increasing. That includes level funded state aid, which was $298,767 from last year. If that's the unrestricted government aid.
Right.
It's not a lot of our budget, but if that number does go up, that would help us. That is really my main variable at this point,
But
so.
we don't have Assabet yet either.
And I don't have
We don't have any
Assabet.
idea what we're looking at.
But
either.
they, from what I understand, yeah,
So, Kristen, when will you get, that number?
yep. They're meeting with us
Next week.
next week.
Next week is
And
also, yeah.
I understand, I'm going to try to watch, I understand they may have had a meeting last night where they discussed some numbers. But I just got an email and I'd like to confirm, I'd like to watch it before I, share those numbers because
Yeah.
I don't know, I want to make sure they're accurate, so.
So, yeah, Carol and Megan, I kept asking Nancy, could you give me a little thumbnail understanding? But, I'm looking at last year's, Berlin budget, and our budget was 14.7 million, so you know how much the schools are in that, right? So if you guys sneeze, we get a cold here, a bad one, right? So that's what Kristen is just projected with preliminary numbers.
So just so I understand correctly, to reach the level service only, we'd have to cut between 350 and 450.
I'd have to cut between.
From the town budget.
We'd have to cut from the town
We'd have to
budget.
cut.
On the
We'd have
town
to cut.
side.
To make your number.
Just
to make-
level service.
Just
To level
to
service.
level
To
service.
level service the schools.
So
Yeah.
you're getting
But
close
just
to
to
almost.
understand that, like, what's the police budget? I just want them to be able to understand.
Yeah,
because
what does
their
that
numbers
mean?
are large for
The
ours.
police budget is 1.2 million,
Yeah.
so to get to like the 20%,
Yeah, we'll never,
you're almost
Right.
talking the whole police budget.
Yeah, and
So-
Chief Shartner's in here talking about,
Right.
He needs
8,500
Yeah, no, I heard.
to get supervision on the night crew,
Yeah.
so like,
And
okay. That's what we're dealing with.
You'll find too, and I know, I'm new, but I'm really a straight shooter. If I thought there was room in here, I certainly would tell you. I'm not hiding anything or trying to pull any punches.
I appreciate that.
It scares me, because I don't know what to do, and I'm gonna have to go back and look and, we only got, so we allowed department heads to put out a supplemental funding request. I only got $65,000 in supplemental funding requests, and I didn't even recommend funding all of them. I only recommended funding the ones that were required to maintain level service, like an $800 QuickBooks. We're talking like $500 for Adobe subscription. Chief Shartner had the largest one on the police side, but he is the largest budget as well. So our increases overall are literally contractual or obligation increases, and just a few small increases to basically maintain. I'm hoping maybe for a state aid miracle. I hate to say that that's where I'm at right now,
Right.
but
Yeah.
No, and I'm
we'll keep
not,
plugging away.
I am not surprised. I used to be an auditor, I'm a CPA, so I have a ton of finance experience. I get it. And I wasn't expecting to come in here and having the FinComs approve. I was asking for this budget, assuming taxes would have to be increased. And I think that's kind of the messaging we've been sending to parents. If you want this, you're gonna have to pay more in taxes.
Right.
Because I get you don't have the money.
Right, because I don't see where
I'm
I
not
can.
surprised by you telling
cut.
me this. I mean, the
Right.
950K is a little like, but I
Right.
get it.
But the 350 to 4, you're talking about a tax increase just to support.
Just to support
that
level services,
side.
which is a little bit troubling. And this is
Sure.
just Berlin.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't know Boylston's situation. But that's probably a conversation you want to have with them. Because it's slightly better and when
Yeah,
it
for
comes
some
to
reason,
the
we have
not
two of
needing
those.
override, but we still need the vote.
All right, well, thanks for running those.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're,
Yeah.
well,
Little
as you
worse.
guys leave in a depressed state,
Little-
I
little worse than I was
apologize.
expecting, but-
Like, oh, 10 o'clock at
I was
night, I'm
like-
really sad.
Maybe we were gonna have to cut the above level and get the level. Yeah,
Do
that's
we
what
have
I
any
thought.
extra Berlins? I don't know.
A little bit of tummy ache now, but
I know.
we'll work it out.
I wish I really do genuinely wish that I had better numbers to offer you. I really do.
I mean, realistically, that's when you hear about Prop 2.5 overrides,
This is.
that's what you're hearing
That's what
about. I mean, you have to figure that the 2.5% is kind of the normal course of business of that's what we increase town government by to pay for the minimal salary increases for, the firefighters' contractual obligations or the police obligation, paying the accountant, paying the assessor, paying the collector, paying for your town personnel. And when you talk about 2.5%, you kind of got to think that your budget really can't go up by a lot more than 2.5%.
Totally get it.
Because, well, first of all, it's a huge portion of our budget, but just in general, I mean, even if nothing else, it means the only way to fund that much more stuff would either be growth, which there's some, but there's not a ton.
I've got about 350,000 in new growth to split amongst the.
Right, so
the
that,
whole
so
pot,
that's.
the whole pie.
Right, so separate from tax revenue, I mean, separate from taxpayer revenue, that 2.5% piece that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're looking at new growth,
And that's already factored in, just so you know.
Right.
and you're
That's
looking
not
at
extra.
excise taxes, and you're looking at, hotel taxes and food taxes, and all that
All
stuff
factored in.
is all stuff that is ongoing and all the time. It's not like all this new revenue just coming on stream. So
Right.
it's literally from year over year. So can you honestly expect those things to go up by, $1 million to fund the schools? No. And so that's where, like you said, when you're thinking you're gonna have to get it from the taxpayers, and if you have taxpayer support, that's where it's gonna have to come from.
That's
And-
been my mindset going into this.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what Carol and Nancy thought about going. That has been my mindset right along. Is that yes, the
Yeah.
only way that the towns are going to have to be able to make this work is through taxpayer support.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because it's the whole 2.5% business, and it's not just that it's not that towns don't want to fund things by higher percentages, it's that you just can't. I mean, it's by statutorily, you can't fund them by more than that. There's the whole levy limit, and we could talk for an hour about levy limit, but, I mean, we'll all go to sleep by then, but, it's just,
I'll listen, you talk, okay? I don't want to teach levy
Yeah,
limit,
and-
I'm not
I do have
there
to
yet.
say, the other thing is too, is that we are gonna have to try to figure out how we can do some sort of a guesstimate for the taxpayers as to how much
Right.
that really means.
Right.
Because
Of course.
it's really hard because we have a
Say.
lot of now elderly people in town with fixed
Right.
incomes.
Yep.
And we found that this little shift that we had with the commercial values going down and the residential's going up,
Right.
that where they picked up more of the burden,
Right, it hit 'em this
it
year.
was hard.
so, I mean, there's a chance that it could be done
It could-
through the levy. There's a chance that it doesn't
Right.
require the Prop 2.5. We do have excess levy capacity, which,
Well,
again,
we
we could talk
wouldn't
about for an
have to,
hour.
but it still would
But,
increase
yeah.
people's taxes.
Well, sure,
so we
right,
That's
would
right.
still have to
That's
Right.
right.
It
figure out
doesn't,
a way to
it's
say-
not free.
Yeah.
It's got to be paid for.
Still has to be voted on.
It has to be voted
But
on,
we also
and-
understand they're going to get a tax increase. if this
Absolutely.
happens,
How
you know.
many-
And that doesn't include capital, just so you know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
I
I
was
didn't
just
mean to
gonna
cut
say,
you off.
we haven't
That
talked about
assumes
capital.
I level funded capital from last year.
Yep.
So
Yes.
that doesn't include the roof, that wouldn't cover, basically your capital was
The equipment.
68,000 for Berlin Memorial last year, and Tohoto was 518,000 with the debt. So I didn't touch those, so that's with that being level.
This is, when my eyes lit up with the reserve fund, because this committee in the last couple of years has worked to get that kind of thing right. And what that does is it just gets you over the ups,
does.
the ups and downs. And then you can chug along pretty close to that 2.5% if you have the ability to, if you have the resilience, the financial resilience to do that, which you get from the funds.
Right.
So I sure would like to see somebody at the state level help us with that, particularly with the impact that special education has on this budget that you've presented.
And we're not alone with
I-
that.
I-
There's so
I
many
just had a
towns who
quick
suffering-
question.
Facing these
We're
situations.
definitely not alone, and
Absolutely.
it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Going back to when we're talking about the increase in taxes, how many households are we talking about in Berlin? For residential taxes?
I don't know.
Households?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean-
we're about 3,000 people. I don't know how many
We're
households
counting
it is.
people, but like when we do property taxes by property.
I don't know.
And I don't know what it is for Berlin, but even if you're saying like 3,000 people, and you're saying.
$1 million.
Three-
Yeah, I get it.
You're,
It's high.
you're
It's a lot.
basically, it's,
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. No. Yep.
And it isn't just, the thing about an operating budget is it continues to operate.
Right. Right.
It's not
Right.
like a capital expense, you do it, you're done, no.
Yeah, it's every year,
it
right. It's not
goes.
just like, hey, you pay this one time and you're done. And-
Right.
And again, we haven't even talked about the capital.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
No, all right.
Thank you.
No, this was
Spending
good
the
though.
time
Thank
with
you
us.
very
This
much.
was just good for this
Yeah.
open dialogue, because at least we can, we're meeting Friday,
Yes.
we can, we gotta go back.
I actually
I'm gonna go over
appreciate
this
all
all
the
week
work
tomorrow,
that you've
too,
done
on Friday.
coming in here. No,